How are you feeling? How long have you been here?
3 months, May 17th.
And what brought you?
That's difficult to answer.
Eventually resulted in your being here in the hospital.
That's difficult to answer.
is the end. There's a noise inside my head of crying people facing death. Is this the end? Is this the end? I'm burning in the there's no place to hide. I'm burning in the this is the final time. What have we done to the world? What have we done to the world? I'm burning in the there's no place to hide. I'm burning in the this is the final
Hey everyone, I'm back. I'm still really sad. For people who don't know, my dog died the other day. I'm still very, very sad. You might see me cry. You're seeing me without makeup. All right, because I'm very sad and I don't put on makeup when I'm crying all the time, because then I would just have black eyeshadow streaming down my face. No one wants that. It's it doesn't look good. It's not a good look. But I did want to do the stream, and I do just, I've really been just trying to keep my head down. I am not going to cry on this stream. It's not going to happen. I am not going to cry. You bastards are not going to make me cry. I've just been trying to keep my head down and work, honestly. So that's what we're going to do. That's what we're going to do. That's what we're going to do. Hey guys, how's it going? How's it going? I spent all day yesterday doing taxes, so that was really fun to do the day after my dog died, and I've been working on a lot of stuff. And oddly, I feel very, I'm just going to talk for a minute. I'm going to get warmed up to being on the internet again. I feel oddly calm. It's like, what I mean by that is, it puts everything in perspective, right? I know my dog wasn't a person, all right, but my dog was my dog. And it was sudden. And I didn't see it coming. And I was not prepared. And I think that puts some things in perspective, right? Because there's so much I want to do. There's so much I want to accomplish. There's so many things that I think that I can give the world that are valuable. And this is the year, I'm going to be honest, this is the year I either really make this work in like a big way. And what I mean is the exposing the left stuff, the decoding the left stuff, or it's the year that I got to say, okay, the world just doesn't want this yet, or it isn't ready for it yet, or I got there too soon, or something like that. And I really do think that the timing is ripe for what I've been building for years. And I think what I've been thinking about since my dog died is just how quick everything can change in an instant, and how we just don't know. We just don't know. And we might have something one day and not have it the next. And we might be here one day and we might not be here the next. And that if you have something that you're supposed to do, and I do believe that this is what I'm supposed to do, I do believe this is a calling, as weird as that sounds, I do actually believe that, then it's time to just keep your head down and plow through and do something big. Because yeah, life is fragile. And it can be taken away from us at any time. And when I die, I believe that I believe we all have a life review when we die, as a way to, like, how did it go? Not to judge, not to make anyone feel bad, but just how did it go? I believe that the purpose of life is experience, and that we look back on it when we go to see how we did. And when I look back on my life, I want to say that I did everything that I could to push this information out into the world. I did every fucking thing I could. And I have so many ideas, and I have so many things I want to do, and I have so many things that I think people want that they just don't know they want yet because it hasn't been introduced to them. And so in many respects, I feel very calmly refocused. I feel like maybe this is just because I'm still in shock. By the way, I haven't eaten anything since Saturday. This is like, I have my mother was yelling at me earlier today. My mother even called. My mother was yelling at me. She's like, Karlyn, have you eaten yet? I was like, no. And she was like, you got to eat. I was like, I don't know about that. Hey, isn't this the moment the internet's been waiting for me to lose weight? Isn't this the moment that the internet's been waiting for when they've been yelling at me to go to the gym? Hey, I'll lose weight. I'll go on the my dog died and I'm severely depressed diet. But I am trying to do some overnight oats. And so this is like seriously the first thing that I've had to eat since Saturday. So don't worry, I'm not going to waste away or anything like that. Where was I going with that? Oh. Maybe it's that I'm in shock still. Maybe it's that I'm depressed. I don't know. But like, a strange calm has come over me where it just feels like I'm above the noise looking down on it. Where it's like, obviously I have these people on the internet that just live to hate me and live to harass me and live to make shit up about me. And do you know what was, I mean, and they're always just kind of there, and they're reeing and they're crying and they're complaining and they're making shit up because they're psychotic. They're fucking nut jobs. And those people attacked me and tried to defame me and smear me over the death of my dog. They've done a lot of evil, fucked up shit over the years. I'm not even going to show you what they did on the screen. I'm not even going to acknowledge them anymore. I can't think of anything lower in this world than using the death of someone's pet, or someone's brother, or someone's sister, or someone's wife, or anything else. Something that was very meaningful to that person. I can't think of anything worse, anything more low than using that to try to attack a person and smear a person and defame a person because you're a jealous fucking cunt on the internet. Can you imagine how much of a low life you have to be? Can you, like, to me, these people are the scum of the earth. And I guess this is my way of saying that so far as I'm concerned, we don't even see those assholes anymore. I know that people like to send me stuff that they're saying. I am asking that people not do that anymore. I am asking that we ignore them. If you want to focus your energy on something, let's get this information out to the world. Let's start, instead of paying any attention to those retards at all, let's start emailing our local GOP, trying to get in front of these parents groups, trying to do presentations out there. I will give you guys the content to push, and I've got a plan for that, and I'm going to be launching some stuff that I think you're really going to like. I will give you guys the things to push. What I need is your help in getting it out there as much as possible. And if they come into your replies, I'm not going to tell anyone what to do. Ignore them and block them would be my recommendation. Please do not engage with them on my behalf, because these people are the scum of the earth, and they cannot be, that's right, these people cannot be helped. These people will only ever bring misery wherever they go. And we don't need that shit. What we're doing is hard enough as it is. We don't need the absolute scum of the earth trying to pull us down to their level every single day. And you know what? They can say whatever they want. They can do whatever they want. They can whine and complain. They can Photoshop pictures of me. They do it every day anyway. They can lie. They can defame me. They can defame my friends. They can defame my family. They can defame my supporters. I don't give a fuck anymore, because these people only have the power over us that we give them. So we're just not going to give them anymore. And if they come into the chat, we're just going to ban them. We're just going to ban them. We're not going to engage with them. We're not going to yell at them. We're just going to ban them. Because I don't need that in my life. I recorded a podcast last night, and then my computer didn't save it. And it's a shame, because it was a really good effing podcast. It was a really good podcast, and I wish you guys could have heard it. And then my computer didn't save it. But what I said, one of the many things that I said, was that, I started out in this space as very much an activist. When I entered this space, or should I say, got thrown into it in 2020, I very much saw myself as an activist. I spent half of 2020 traveling around the country, doing rally after rally after rally after rally, trying to get people to care. I spent 2021 working on anti-CRT bills all over the country, helping people pass those, helping explain what CRT was, exposing different things that the left was doing. I've been an activist. I was involved in Libertarian Party politics for the lack of judgment that led me to the Libertarian Party. We can talk about that later, but I mean, libertarians are activists. I live in New Hampshire. I live around some of the most active libertarian activists in the world. I was engaging with them for a long time. How I kind of see myself today is a little bit changed, though. Because, I mean, at the core of what I am, I'm a psychologist. I'm an industrial organizational psychologist. I went into corporations, and I would analyze team dynamics, and I would analyze the psychology of a team, and I would tell a team how to work together better. And I would give them the psychology behind it. I would teach them mindfulness strategies. I would teach them stress relief strategies. I would teach them how to talk to each other in a way that they didn't piss each other off. I would teach them how to be better managers. I did all this stuff in organizations. When I started following the left, I didn't realize I was doing this at the time, but I was bringing my organizational psychology knowledge into analyzing social systems in the political sphere, analyzing group dynamics among all the different groups that exist in the political sphere. And there are a bunch of different groups, and they're all basically cults. Part of the reason that I call my show The Cult is not just that I think the far left is a cult, although I do. It's not just that the cult is short for the culture war, although it was. It's not just that my retard haters on the internet accuse me of having a cult and they accuse all my audience members of being in a cult. I just thought that was funny. The reason I called my show The Cult actually went back to a conversation I had with Andrew Gold before Andrew Gold blew up and got really famous on the internet for covering Meghan Markle and royal things. And I thought his other stuff was so much better, but you know, he got famous for something else. I guess that's fine. But back in the day when I met Andrew Gold was researching cults, and he came on my show, I don't even know when, a while back. And he talked about how basically every group is its own type of little cult. And I really thought about that over the years. This was a long time ago. I think it's like in 2021, 2022, something like that. It's a long ass time ago. It's shocking to me how long I've been doing this. But Andrew would talk about how all different groups are just different variations of cults. And so I thought a lot about that. And I was like, you know what? He's right. And if you look at the political landscape, it's no different. You have the revolutionary socialists and the leftists, the ones we really like to watch. You have the queer Marxists. You have the revolutionary communists of America, who are their own cult. You have the Party of Socialism and Liberation. You have the Democratic Socialists of America. You have the Haymarket Book Socialists. You have the Firebrand Collective Communists. You have, if we're going more towards, I mean, I guess the Democrats, you could say, are a cult. They're a really disorganized cult. They're not even an interesting cult to follow, if we're honest about it. But they are a cult, I guess. You have libertarians are absolutely a cult, and there are several different cults within the Libertarian Party. Coming over to the right side of the spectrum, you have, well, I wouldn't even say the classical liberals are on the right. The classical liberals are on the left. They pretend to be on the right, but they're actually on the left, but they're absolutely their own cult. You have the conservatives, you have the MAGA voters, you have the Christian nationalists, you have the Groypers, you have, you know, the neo-Nazis, because there are neo-Nazis and I don't like them and I don't support them and I don't like being around them, but they do exist. How do I see myself in this landscape? I don't see myself as a part of any of these groups. I'm myself. I'm me. I am outside of all of this now. There maybe was a time when I saw myself as part of one of those groups, but I just don't anymore. And that's no offense to people that I have good relationships with or align with or any of those things. I just have a different vision for myself now than I did several years ago. And the vision that I have now is I want to be a person that is looking down on all the different things. Not looking down from a I'm better than you perspective. That's not what I'm saying. But I mean observing it from more of a detached perspective. I don't consider myself an activist anymore in that I'm not going to fight for your team. I'm not going to fight for your tribe. I'm not going to say the talking points that you're desperate for me to say. I'm not going to coddle your feelings. I wouldn't even say, Jane, I'm politically homeless. I am an anarcho-capitalist. I know what my politics are. In my heart of hearts, I'm an anarcho-capitalist. Practically speaking, I'd like to ban some things, but you know. But am I going to come and speak the talking points of Ancapistan? I mean, probably not. I mean, it's got to, like, anarcho-capitalists have a badass flag, and I'll rock that on a t-shirt sometime. But, you know, I don't view it as my job to convince you to be an anarcho-capitalist. I don't see it as my job to convince you of anything. I just don't care anymore. And it's not that I don't care about the subject matter. I care deeply about the subject matter in ways that I cannot escape. I have tried to escape. I have tried to quit. I have tried to give all this up on numerous occasions, and I cannot escape it. And I guess that's just the way it goes. This is my calling, for better or worse. So I'm deeply passionate about the subject matter in terms of studying the far left, decoding the far left, analyzing the far left, bringing all of my skills as an industrial organizational psychologist to this thing. bringing the marketing background that I have to it, because I did marketing for 10 years. I did marketing in higher education for 10 years. It seems like a former life now when I think about it. I worked for colleges and universities all over the country for a decade of my life doing marketing and fundraising and things like that. So I have this really odd skill set. I have this odd skill set of knowing how to make stuff look really good. And you got to admit, my stuff looks good. I've got my brand down. Like, and I don't mean brand as like an inauthentic exercise. Like, I feel like I have been able to embrace me in the past year, and that's really cool. But I have this weird skill set where like, I know how to put things together well. I know how to write. I'm a writer. I know how to get content out there. I know how to put stuff together. But I also have the psychology piece where I know how to analyze social systems. I know how to teach it. I know how to explain it. I know how to break it down. I know how to bring audiences along with me, because that's what I did for a long time. I stood up in front of rooms of people and said, you're all going to come with me now, and we're going to go on this journey together, and you're going to learn some stuff on this journey. And you might not like it, and you think it's boring, and that's fine. I'm going to try to make it fun. And I do think I try to make learning this stuff fun. You know, we mock it, we satirize it, we have a good time with it, we laugh at them, we laugh at ourselves sometimes. So I kind of like this perfect storm of skill set to do this. And how I want to do it moving forward, and this is what I've been doing for a while, is, man, you know what? I'm not part of your group. I'm not part of any group. That doesn't mean I dislike you. It doesn't mean I dislike your group. I just want to do my thing. And if we're friends and we're cool, I think that's cool. If you want to fight with me, I'm just not fucking interested. If you want to convince me to try to be on your team, I am not interested. I want to be a detached observer of what's going on so that I can best explain it and articulate it in a way that I think is going to allow people to understand what's going on. And I don't think there's enough people doing that. Everyone's on a team. You kind of have to have a team. Except I don't. I don't have to have a team. I am the person, I am the analyst for people who don't want to choose a team, for people who don't want to be on a tribe, for people who want to know what's going on and they want real nuanced information, and they want to be able to look at it for themselves and think through it for themselves and talk to other people about it in a nuanced way. That's who's welcome here. I fear we might be a minority on the internet, but sometimes I don't think we are. Sometimes I think that people are starving for just kind of a place they can go to think about what's going on, to get their questions answered, to not have to fight. Is anyone else tired of fighting? I know, words you never thought that would come out of my mouth, right? But I'm just so tired of fighting. I'm tired. I don't want to do it anymore. It doesn't accomplish anything. And there are real problems in the world. And we have the ability to analyze those problems and provide people with recommendations for what to do about those problems in a way that's going to serve their goals and going to serve their needs. And quite frankly, people are not always going to do with this information what I want them to do with this information, and that's fine. People are not always going to show up in the way I want them to show up, and I just don't care anymore. My only job is to provide people with the information, provide people with the receipts, break it down, explain it. And if they want to ask questions, they can ask questions, but go forth. Go forth. So that's what we're going to do. And that's how we're going to focus. And I've got a lot of stuff I'm going to be talking about with you guys as I feel more up to it. And I've got a lot of stuff I'm building behind the scenes that I think you guys are going to like. But for today, what we're going to do is we're going to revisit our friend Judith Butler. Because just yesterday, just yesterday. I'm so sorry I missed this. It was on my calendar. We were gonna watch this live. Just yesterday, Judith Butler appeared on Haymarket Books YouTube channel to talk about her book, Who's Afraid of Gender? Now, someone asked in the chat, haven't we seen this recently? Yeah, we've been watching some Judith Butler recently. That's very true. But we haven't seen this one because this one just aired yesterday. And the reason I want to watch this is on Haymarket Books YouTube channel, which means Judith Butler is talking to a very committed audience of socialists. And Judith knows that. So how is Judith going to talk to this audience in a way that's different than how she talked at the supposed anti-woke college, the New College of Florida? How is that going to be different? I'm really interested to see what she's going to say. So this is what we're going to watch. And actually, you know what this is? I don't even think this was actually streamed live. So we didn't actually miss anything by not streaming it yesterday, because this is like a fully produced event. Look, they're like in a live studio space, and Haymarket Books usually doesn't do this. I'm pretty sure this is at Haymarket House. Haymarket House is a house that Haymarket Books owns in Chicago, where they do like events and readings and things like that. So this was a live recorded event at their private venue. So I don't think this was actually streamed live yesterday. I think they just premiered it live, which is fine. So we didn't miss the opportunity to ask Judith questions. That was what we really wanted to watch this live for. But we can go back and see what they talked about. And that is what we are going to do. We are going to get the full socialist language then, which is nice because I like learning the way to define words. Yeah, we're going to get that. I'm also working on my How to Speak Socialist dictionary, so that will actually be coming out soon. We're going to have an actual book with all of their words, and it's going to be great. So that's what we're going to do today, guys. Couple quick things before we get started. Now, I have been launching a lot of stuff over on my Substack. That is Karlyn, KARLYN.substack.com. Just so you guys know, we are going to be doing a membership drive. We are doing a membership drive for the Substack because I would like some more supporters. I would like to be able to do some more stuff. And my funding comes 100% from you. So my goal is that I want to get enough members on the Substack where I can justify keeping all this content free for everyone. This is a constant balance with the Substack, right? Because I put a lot of content out there. I want this content to be free for everyone. But in order for me to make this free for everyone, I need people to support my work. I need you guys to sign up, because if you guys don't sign up as members for $8 a month, $80 a year, then I can't continue to provide free content for everyone. So we are going to be having a membership drive, okay? And so if you've been waiting for the chance to sign up for my Substack, well, now you can sign up now if you want, because I do need to have a certain level of funding in order to kind of keep the operation going. Now, I don't want anyone to get like confused or anything. Like, I'm not in the poorhouse or nothing like that. Like, I'm so grateful for the amount of people who support my work. I have it much easier than a lot of other people in this space. But in order for me to do more, in order for me to scale in the way that I want to, we're going to have to get those numbers up. Like I said, I did my taxes yesterday. Okay. I did math all fucking day. This is the one day a year I do math. I'm actually really good at math, but this is the one day a year I do math. And so I did some math, and I need more members on the Substack to be able to do what I want to do. And that's just the way it goes. And I feel like this is a very affordable way for people to support my work. You get access to private calls with me on Zoom every Monday at 7 p.m. We didn't do one yesterday, but that's okay because I was taking the day off because I had a hard time. I know you guys understand, but we will be back next week. We do movie nights on Sunday nights and Monday nights in my supporter Discord. You get access to my supporter Discord. You get more direct access from me. You get access for private events and infiltrations that we do. So you do actually get quite a lot of perks in terms of becoming a member on the Substack, and you get to support the work I'm doing. And there's going to be some stuff coming up that I think you guys are really going to like that are also going to come with membership and stuff like that to encourage people to sign up. And guys, it's really important now more than ever because, listen, we're on our own. If we feel strongly that this information needs to get out there, and I know I do, and I know many of you do as well, We are the ones that need to make this happen. My commitment to you has always been that I will show up for you if you show up for me. Okay. I will show up for you by providing you with this content, by providing you with the clips, by breaking it down. I'm starting to get AI Pretty Wired to do our analysis for us because I've been loading AI transcripts of leftist presentations into the AI for months and months and months and months and months to teach it and to train it and to teach it basically to think like me. So that's starting to pay off. And we're going to be able to do some really effing cool analysis, and we're going to be able to write some cool things and put some things out there that I think will actually make headway and that aren't being spoken to by other people in this space. But I need your help to do that. And the best way you can help me out is by becoming a member on the Substack for $8 a month, $80 a year. I really do appreciate it. We got a couple articles that have come out since last night. I did an essay called "It's the Jews, but Is It?" In that essay, that's kind of a response to Daryl Cooper. Daryl Cooper put out an essay where he's like, I don't really like all these anti-Semites and I blocked them on Twitter. For people who don't know, Daryl Cooper is kind of the center of a controversy between Douglas Murray being an asshole on Joe Rogan, and Dave Smith was there too. And Douglas Murray was all, why are you platforming Daryl Cooper, who also goes by Martyr Maid? Why are you platforming him? You shouldn't be talking to him because he has ideas that Douglas Murray doesn't like. Well, Daryl Cooper wrote an essay to respond to that. You can find the link in that article, and basically says like, listen, man, I'm not anti-Semitic. I don't like anti-Semites. And I think we need to be a little bit more nuanced about this. And that's a position that I'm going to agree with. Listen. And let me say this clearly. Okay, let me just go. I wasn't planning on talking about that this much, but you know what? It's my show. I'll do what I want. People are going to think that I've changed my position on this because I'm friendly with Nick Fuentes and because I'm friendly with the Groypers and because I don't mind telling a joke about Jewish soda. And I don't mind saying that, yeah, I think Hitler went to heaven, but not because I think Hitler was the best person in the world, but because I think literally everyone goes to heaven. Literally everyone. Because I think that God's love is unconditional. No matter what we do here, we are loved by God. That's my personal spiritual belief. You don't have to agree with it. That's fine. I say all this because people are going to think this article is like a change for me. They're like, Karlyn, of course you embrace anti-Semitism. Like, no, I don't. Like, come on. Can we stop being stupid for a second? This is one of those things where, like, you know, my dog dying put a bunch of stuff in perspective. And I'm like, I'm just so over this whole everything is anti-Semitic because I support Israel and you don't. It's like, you know what? Come on. Literally no one is talking about genociding the Jews. And we need to be honest about that. No one who is a serious person is saying the Holocaust didn't happen. That's not an argument that I would get on board with. I think that it's interesting to have discussions about World War II. It's interesting to look at these different perspectives. And quite frankly, I think that people like Daryl Cooper raise interesting questions that are worthy of consideration. I don't think it makes you an anti-Semite to consider those things. What I said in this article is, listen, my audience spans the gamut of disaffected lefty all the way over to National Socialist. I do have self-professed National Socialists that watch this channel. Everyone is welcome here. Everyone. I don't care if you're a disaffected lefty. I don't even care if you're a classical liberal as long as you're polite and you're not going to, cause problems. I don't care if you're a MAGA conservative. I don't care if you're a Christian nationalist. I don't care if you're a National Socialist. I don't care. I don't care if you're a Groyper. I don't care if you're something else entirely. I don't care. And in regards to like the Holocaust stuff, how I view this is, regardless of whether you think a couple 100,000 people died in the Holocaust or 6 million people died in the Holocaust, a horrific number of people died in the Holocaust. That is one thing that I think we can all agree on, right? Like whether it was a couple 100,000, which is what some people think, or whether it was 6 million, which is what other people think. I just don't I personally don't care. I think that people should be able to debate this from an intellectual perspective. If you think that a couple 100,000 people died in the Holocaust, argue it from an intellectual perspective. If you think that those people are crazy and that absolutely no less than 6 million Jews died in the Holocaust, argue it from that perspective. But can we just admit that regardless of where the answer is, like a horrific number of people died and those deaths are a tragedy? Can we just admit that? Can we just be human beings for a second? A lot of people died. Probably a lot of innocent people that were playing a game that they didn't know they were caught up in. Why can't we just say that, yeah, okay, maybe it's okay to ask questions about these things. And also maybe it's okay to say that a lot of innocent people died unnecessarily. And that's a tragedy. And we shouldn't want to repeat that. So people are going to think I'm changing my position. I'm not actually changing my position. I think that people should be able people should be allowed to talk about whatever subjects they want to talk about. And if people want to ask questions about World War II, they should be allowed to ask those questions. And if other people think they're insane for asking those questions, then maybe they should make their points intellectually and have a discussion about it. But for me, I actually don't care. Because what I care about is the far left. That's what my focus is. I cover the far left. And no, it's not all Jewish. This drives me more crazy than almost anything. Karlyn, it's the Jews, it's the Jews, it's the Jews. Why don't you just admit it's the Jews? On this, Daryl Cooper and I are in complete agreement. That shit drives me insane. And the reason it drives me insane is every time I ask for evidence, every time I ask for receipts, I don't get it. I deal in primary source evidence. I understand that primary source evidence is not always the easiest thing to find. I understand that primary source evidence can be complicated and can be, difficult to read and understand sometimes. I get it. I really, really do. But I deal in primary source evidence. And so if you're going to come to me and you're going to say, it's the Jews, it's the Jews, it's the Jews, and then you can't provide me any primary source evidence that all these people that you're talking about are actually Jewish, come on. And that's what that's what happens with it's the Jews people. I've had several run-ins with these people, and I'm not talking about the Groypers, by the way. I've never actually had this problem with the Groypers, ironically. So I'm not talking about the Groypers. I don't want anyone to get pissed off. I don't want to see any replies, okay? I'm not actually talking about them. Because there are people on the internet that are way worse than the Groypers. Significantly worse than the Groypers, okay? I have been attacked by those people on many occasions, and they're so annoying, and they come across as so ignorant to me. And it's like everything they show me is like a cherry-picked piece of propaganda that they've all put together into a Word document, and they put Jewish stars all over it. And I'm like, okay, that might be evidence of knowing how to use Photoshop. It's not evidence that supports the question that I'm asking you. Because you can't cherry pick evidence and have that be the full breadth of evidence that exists. So I don't actually care if it was a couple 100,000 people in the Holocaust or 6 million. I know there are people who do care. I'm not saying that you're not allowed to care. I'm saying I personally don't. What I care about is what is happening today. We can't go back and change history. We can debate history. We can discuss history. We can analyze history, but we can't go back and change it. We can change what's going on right now if we understand it. And so, while I do have a great many friends on the dissident right, because I do consider myself to be friends with some of the Groypers, I'm just going to respectfully decline to continue to participate in this conversation. And it's not because I support Israel and what they're doing, because I don't. But my focus is the left. And I'll engage in this conversation as much as I have to, as it's relevant for the space that I'm in. But I want to be able to focus on the left. And that's where I want to be. And I don't want to fight the Israeli power fight. I'm not saying that that is not a fight worth fighting. I'm saying I don't want to do it. I have too much to deal with already. I have so much shit. Yo, I'm trying to fight the queer Marxism fight, okay? None of you, it's the Jews people, even know what queer Marxism is. I am trying to fight the queer Marxism fight that you don't even know about. So I don't want to feel like I'm compelled to engage in these types of conversations unless I make the choice to do so. So that's how I feel about that. We need to focus on what matters. And it's not that I'm betraying anyone. It's not that I'm crashing out. It's not that I'm stabbing anyone in the back. It's not that I've changed my position. None of those things have happened. I'm just saying that I'm focusing on the left. Yes, this is exactly right. This is an argument that no one can win. And I don't want to be in a situation where I'm chasing my tail on this argument all the time when I think there are bigger problems to fight. So you can read that essay over on the Substack. What else do I have over there? I also wrote an essay about the, yesterday Harvard announced that it would be foregoing federal funding in response to the Trump administration. You can find this article over on the Substack. I don't really talk about much of what happened other than basically Trump threatened to pull $2.2 billion from Harvard. And Harvard sent a letter back to Trump and was like, go screw. And so now Trump is doubling down, and now Trump is like posting on Truth Social, and he's going, maybe Harvard wants to lose its tax exempt status. Well, that's not going to happen because Harvard is a nonprofit and Trump's not going to change that. But bigger picture here. Yeah. By the way, I predicted this. I said this was exactly what was going to happen. But bigger picture here is that Harvard turning down federal funding is actually going to be an interesting test. Because in Harvard turning down the $2.2 billion of federal funding, and everyone knows, right, that Harvard has a $50 billion endowment. This is not going to shut down Harvard. This is not going to stop Harvard. Harvard has all the money they need to continue operating in perpetuity forever without the $2 billion. But what this is going to do is this is going to give Harvard free reign to do whatever the F it wants. No federal funding means no federal oversight. Do you know what's going to happen with no federal oversight on the schools? I'll tell you what's going to happen with no federal oversight on the schools. The schools are going to get more leftist. The schools are going to get more leftist. The schools are going to hire more leftist faculty. The schools are going to double down on DEI, everything. And by the way, Harvard, there is no reality that exists in which Harvard graduates will not be hired. Do you want to know why there's no reality that exists in which Harvard graduates will not be hired? Because not hiring the Harvard graduates would weaken the degree credentials of the Harvard alumni that are already all over every elite institution in the country. So imagine this. So Harvard's a funnel, right, to all these elite institutions in the country. Harvard is an employment funnel. You go to Harvard, you can write your ticket in any number of places. So there are all these elite organizations all over the country that are staffed by Harvard graduates, Harvard alums. So if you have a degree from Harvard or from Yale or from Princeton or any other of the Ivy League schools, and you start to say, I'm not going to hire from the Ivies anymore because they're too leftist, you are devaluing your own credential. Do you guys understand? There is no universe in which the graduates of Ivy League schools, who, by the way, and I worked in several Ivy League schools. I either worked in or did consulting for like 3 of the Ivies. There is no way in this universe that Ivy League graduates who are obsessed with the fact that they're Ivy League graduates, and it's like the biggest thing they've ever done in their life is to get into the Ivy League school and graduate from the Ivy League school. There is no universe in which those people are then going to say, gee, I just don't know about the Ivy Leagues. I don't think I'm going to hire their graduates anymore. And so it's going to continue to perpetuate in the elite institutions, because who's doing the hiring in the elite institutions? It's the Ivy League graduates. So Harvard is going to be an interesting test case for what happens next. What can we expect schools to do after they turn down the federal funding? And what does that mean? What does it mean that they're literally able to say and do whatever they want with no federal oversight? Trump might have stepped in this a little bit more than he understands. And this is one of those things where it's like, okay, it sounds good from like a short-term political perspective. You're trying to play big man. You're trying to strong arm people into things. And I'm not necessarily opposed to what Trump did, by the way. I'm not arguing that Trump shouldn't have done this. I'm on the fence about that. I actually could go either way on it. What I will say is that there are ramifications for an Ivy League school successfully turning down the money. Because now every other Ivy League school is going to be watching Harvard. Columbia, who has already capitulated to the Trump administration, they're going to be watching Harvard. They're going to be like, what are you doing? How are you getting around this? How are you making this work with the federal funding thing? And if Harvard is able to successfully make this work and the elite donors step up, which I bet you they will, then they win, we lose, game over. Because they can say and do whatever the F they want. And there's no more federal oversight. And so that's basically what this article is about. You can read the full essay over on the Substack, and you can get my thoughts on that. And I also did put up some clips. We have the clip from Yale University that we found last week. And by the way, this was actually the most interesting part of the entire presentation we did last week. This was another Haymarket Books presentation. This was a Haymarket Books presentation that we watched with a faculty member from Yale and a student from Yale, talking about how Yale is literally funding them to go undercover at right-wing events. Was anyone around for this stream last week? We literally found an organization at Yale that is funded by Yale Space Jack says, will private donors necessarily be left wing? Yes, they always have been. Yale is currently funding leftist activists to go undercover at right-wing events and then report back to leftist activists. Now, I posted this on Twitter earlier today, and of course the conservative response has predictably been, well, if they're going to right-wing events, that means they're going to leave the left and they're going to come join us. That's not what's happening. It's not what's happening at all. These are leftist activists being funded by Yale University to go undercover at conservative events and to report back on what they learned at the conservative event so that the left can come up with better strategies. They're not leaving the left. That's not what's happening. I know conservatives think that because conservatives see the stories of people like me, of people who woke up and left the left, and that's what conservative media shows them. So they think that any time that a leftist goes to a conservative event, it's like, oh, they're waking up and leaving the left. That's the story they have. That's not what's going on. This is opposition research. This is opposition research being funded by Yale University. And I'm going to tell you guys, as kind of like the standard for leaving the left, most people who say they're leaving the left are lying. Everyone knows that, right? Most of the people who come along and they're like, hey guys, I was a Democrat that left the left. Most of them are lying. And they get found out so quickly. It's like they start using the word. Do you know what the dead giveaway is for people who left the left that are lying? Is they start calling everyone the libs. Let me let you guys in on a secret. I was a Democrat for 20 years. former leftists don't use the term the libs in a derogatory way. The only people who use that specific term are conservatives or people who are like MAGA adjacent, but people who are actually former Democrats don't go, ugh, the libs. They don't say that. Like, it's just like, they don't talk like that. And so most of the people who reportedly left the left are lying, and they're being lifted up by conservative media because it paints a nice story. I just happen to be a real person, and now I understand why most people thought I was lying, because everyone else lies. I just wasn't. I wasn't. Anyway, if you guys want to learn about that story and see the receipts that Harvard University is indeed funding their leftist students and their professors to go undercover right-wing events, that is also on the Substack, along with the clip of one of those leftists talking about smuggling in abortion pills. Because why wouldn't we smuggle abortion pills in from Mexico and send them to people who need abortion pills in states where abortions has been banned? And oh, guess what? We have them on video talking about it. So lots of great stuff going on in the Substack, guys. When you support my work, this is the type of thing you're supporting, is these breakdowns, these nuanced opinions, I think nuanced opinions about what's going on, what you need to know. I'm trying to breathe a breath of fresh air into the insanity. I really don't want to play into the fighting anymore. I just want to talk about the left and analyze the left and give you receipts about the left. And I hope you appreciate that enough to support the work I'm doing, which you can do for $8 a month, $80 a year over on the Substack. I would really appreciate it. Also want to remind people that if you want to get a copy of any of the books that I've written lately, you can head over to redmenacepress.com. This is my new publishing website. It's basically a landing page where you can find my books. If you want to make sure you're buying my books directly from me, go to redmenacepress.com. And you can pick up books like A Brief History of Racism, Debunking the Communist Manifesto, or my latest book, and can I just say, the book with probably the best cover ever. I love this book cover. I love the white. It's got a giant-ass skull on the back. You can pick up the copy of my new fairy tale that I just wrote. Yes, I wrote a fairy tale. I wrote a novel called The Communist Manifesto, a Revolutionary Fairy Tale. This is a dystopian fairy tale about what happens in the communist revolution. And it is a fairy tale, but is it? But is it? But is it? Is it a fairy tale? I don't know, man. I don't know, because a lot of this stuff in this book has actually happened. So we got the story of the communist revolution, and then we've got the inevitable demise that occurs after that. And let me just tell you, it gets dark, it gets bloody, it gets cruel, which is everything that the communist revolution will be, whether the communists want to admit it or not. You can also see the books that I've got coming soon over on the Substack. We are going to have Alice in Queerland coming up. I'm still working on Be Gay, Do Crime, the story of the Mary Nardini gang. I am still working on Queer Marxism. I'm still working on Re-Education, which is not on the website. I am working on a woke dictionary, a how to speak socialist dictionary. I've got so many projects, you guys have no idea. This is the year of Karlyn publishing a metric ton of books. And that's just going to be the way it is. So head over to redmenacepress.com. And I want to thank Mary and Judy for leaving a review so far on the Communist Manifesto, Revolutionary Fairy Tale. I do hope you guys will pick up your copy. If you pick up your copy and read it, give it a 5-star review. That would be awesome. All right. Let's jump right into our show, shall we? Let's jump into our show. I've been yammering on for an hour. We are watching from Haymarket Books. This was streamed yesterday, literally yesterday. And we're going to listen to the lady in the mask. Look, they're wearing masks. They're still wearing masks. We are watching Judith Butler, Who's Afraid of Gender. And this was, I think, from Haymarket Books, Haymarket House. And let's get this party started. Of course, we'll fast forward. Don't worry. I'll fast forward. I'm just waiting for it to go up. There it is. Oh, come on. Let me fast forward, asshole. No, that's not there yet. Like housekeeping. I want to hear what they have to say. Oh, come on. At more information. Bosses. Third. Back.
My name.
Okay.
Hello, can
Maybe it
everyone
was
hear me?
live.
Okay. All right. Okay, can everyone hear me?
Oh gosh, loud.
Awesome. Okay, thank you all so much for coming out this evening. My name is Casey. I work for Haymarket. I'm just going to go over some quick housekeeping before we get started, before I pass it along to the wonderful folks at Women and Children First. Bathrooms are through that hallway to the right. And I just wanted to take this opportunity to give some announcements about some cool stuff happening at Haymarket. May 3rd is our May Day barbecue and fundraiser. So if you like the programming we do at Haymarket House, you want to come through, show your support, it would be awesome to have you. Additionally, Enemy Feminisms, TERFs, Policewomen, and Girl Bosses Against Liberation by Sophie Lewis is now out. We are having our in-person Chicago discussion group starting in May. If that sounds interesting to you, you can register using that QR code on the wall and follow Haymarket House on Instagram for more information. Okay, and with that, I'm going to pass it along to Women and Children First.
Hello, everyone.
Yeah, just to be clear, Fender Bean, the website just links to Amazon. I just want people to be sure that they're buying the right copy of the book. So that's all.
Welcome. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. My name is Shuli Cook. I'm a bookseller at Women and Children First, Chicago's premier feminist bookstore since 1979. Thank you. I wanted to just start really quick tonight by acknowledging that we are on the unceded homeland of the Council of the Three Fires, the Ojibwe, Ottawa, and Potawatomi nations. Many other tribes, such as the Miami, Ho-Chunk, Menominee, Sac, and Fox, have also called this area home. And today, Chicago has one of the largest indigenous communities residing in the United States. At the store, we're doing our best to go beyond words to the work of supporting Native community and literature. And so we encourage you to check out the American Indian Center of Chicago and encourage you to look into the social, cultural, and educational services that they offer. We're one of only a handful remaining feminist bookstores in the United States, so thank you so much for your support. Our nonprofit Women's Voices Fund is the way that we as a store are able to bring you exciting events like this one, so please consider donating. And if you enjoyed tonight's event, make sure to check our events calendar for more good stuff to come. Tonight, it is my honor to introduce two original and nuanced thinkers who fearlessly examine and decode the
Hang on. Andy No posted Antifa protesters that said being unmasked in public is violence. Why do you think that is? Why do you think that is? Yeah, my book cover is way better than Judith Butler's book cover. That's very true. My book cover is about 8,000 times better. So why do we think that is? Pop quiz for the chat. Why do you think that is that Antifa protesters believe that being unmasked in public is literally violence? Because we're in a pandemic. That's right. Because it is an act against the safety of a community. That's right. Because it will literally kill people who are immunocompromised. They really do believe this. That's why they're wearing a mask. That's why the person on the screen right now who is at their in-person event is wearing a mask. It's not because they're trying to hide their identity. They're in their private space. They're proud of what they're doing. They're wearing a mask because they believe that, let's see, they believe that it is selfish and it is not in solidarity. A mask means solidarity, but it's also because if you don't wear a mask, you are literally getting other people sick and those other people could literally die. Is there a reason the quality is always similar to this with their videos? Because it's socialist technology. Socialists aren't great with technology. We have to suffer through it. That is our lot in life. Yeah, if you don't wear a mask, then you are failing to care for other people in the community. You are not being a good comrade. You are attacking the most vulnerable because they believe that's exactly like they believe that you not wearing a mask is oppressive to the most vulnerable members of the community. It's considered assault to not wear a mask. Exactly. Well done, guys.
unspoken boundaries that surround ourselves, our culture, and the wider world around us. Lisa Wadeen is the Mary R. Morton Distinguished Service Professor of Political Science and the College Director of the Chicago Center for Contemporary Theory and Associate Faculty in Anthropology at the University of Chicago. She is the recipient of the David Collier Mid-Career Achievement Award and an NSF Fellowship. Her publications include 3 books, Ambiguities of Domination, Peripheral Visions, and Authoritarian Apprehensions, Ideology, Judgment, and Mourning in Syria. Judith Butler is the author of several books, including Gender Trouble, Feminism, and the Subversion of Identity, Bodies That Matter, On the Discursive Limits of Sex, The Psychic Life of Power, Theories and Subjection, and The Force of Nonviolence.
Well, so why do they, yeah, well, the ones that are in STEM aren't going to work at the book publisher. Who's think about who is going to work at this is a socialist book publisher, right? So think about the type of person that's going to go work at the socialist book publisher. It's going to be the gender studies majors. It's the gender studies majors. It's the English majors. It's the social justice majors. It's the queer studies majors. Those are the people that are going to go work at the STEM graduates are not working at the socialist book publisher. That's the problem.
In addition to their numerous academic honors and publications, Butler is on the Academic Council of Jewish Voice for Peace, has published editorials and reviews in a wide range of journals and newspapers, including the New York Times, Time, and the London Review of Books, and has been featured on radio programs and podcasts throughout the world. Their new book, Who's Afraid of Gender, is an astounding tour de force of insight and analysis that exposes the root of fear and fantasy that have grown a backlash to the understanding of gender and urges us on to create new stories and imaginings of what we want the future to be. Please join me in welcoming Lisa Wadeen and Judith Butler.
Everyone cross your fingers that the sound is good. Oh, Judith is wearing a mask. That's very nice of her. Or they, them. Sorry, I don't want to misgender. They, them. Judith is a they, them.
Thank you for inviting me to be your interlocutor, Judith, and thank you to the staff at Haymarket Books for arranging this.
Okay, the sound is a little low, so what I'm going to do, we're going to do our thing that we do, which is I'm going to turn my microphone volume down, and everyone has to get ready. We all have to do this together. Everyone has to turn the volume up on their computer, okay? So I'm turning my microphone volume down because their microphone volume is low. It might go back up at any moment. We have to be prepared. And now I'm going to turn my personal volume up, and that way I can still hear myself.
Event. I'm truly honored. And I'm
that
going to make
good?
a few
Ooh, that's
comments
loud.
and then pose various questions. I won't ask the questions all at once so that we can have a bit of a back and forth. Can you guys hear me in the back? Okay.
Is that okay, guys? How's the volume?
I'm a scholar who has written on questions of ideology.
Fuck you, socialists! Oh my god, my ears just got blown out. That's not cool, man. That's not cool. Okay, everyone turn their volume down again.
And I've learned so much from your work, from Gender Trouble through Bodies That
We
Matter.
were doing so good.
Your position on resistance and help us think about what it means to work the weaknesses of the system, to your remarkable recounting of the temporal impossibility of Althusser's allegory of the passerby.
We're back,
in
I
the
think.
psychic
We're back.
life of power, to your understanding and excitable speech of interpolations practices as not necessarily requiring belief to be powerful, just to take a few examples. And I've been grateful to you for your deep and penetrating thought. I think everyone here shares that gratitude. Now, Who's Afraid of Gender joins these works in its capacity to participate in and invite fresh thinking about the fraughtness of the category of gender, its vulnerability to phantasmatic uptake, in other words, to nightmarish, spectral, illusory, anxiety-laden fantasies. The phantasm of gender works, you argue, in part through the externalization of harm, a way of, and I'm quoting here, collecting and escalating multitudes of modern panics. The phantasmatic scene, you underscore, is not the same as a fantasy I happen to have a moment of distraction. It's rather a way of organizing the world wrought by the fear of a destruction for which gender is held responsible. That's also quoted from the book. And yet the anti-gender movement is itself remarkably destructive, as you also
Okay, just so people know, just in case anyone is new. This is the Orwellian language that the left is currently using to describe people like us who think gender ideology is stupid and should be banned. And okay, maybe not everyone agrees with me that it should be banned. I think that queer ideology and gender ideology should actually be banned. I think Trump should write an executive order just flat out banning it from all public places. I mean, I know he can't really do this. I'm saying in my ideal world, I would like it banned from everything. I would like it banned from schools. I would like the publication of it banned. I would like presentations about it banned. I would like talking about it banned. We do not like queer and gender ideology on this channel. And if you do, you are probably in the wrong place and you think I'm a socialist when I'm not. I'm the opposite of that. And so I want to explain to people what they mean when they say the anti-gender movement. Because by all rights and purposes, these people are the anti-gender people. These people believe in the complete abolition of gender. If you don't believe me, come to Counter Revolutionary Book Club. We do them on Thursdays. Go look at the Counter Revolutionary Book Club on my Substack. They literally say it all the time. They want to abolish gender because they believe that we will not have gender equity until all gender is abolished and we are all non-binary they thems. But they're not talking about themselves when they say anti-gender. They're talking about people like us that want to ban gender and queer ideology. We are the ones that are apparently anti-gender, whereas the socialists literally want to abolish all gender, and they're not considering themselves anti-gender. So that's the Orwellian language game that's being played. You have to understand that going into it. When they're saying anti-gender, they're not talking about the abolition of the gender binary, which is what they want. They're talking about getting rid of gender ideology entirely, which is what we want. Yeah, they're just flipping the language. That's all they're doing. They're just flipping the language.
Highlight. It pursues its goals of eviscerating institutions and upending ordinary practices with terrifying efficacy, intent on harming those who seek to live and love without fearing for their lives, for being, say, non-binary or queer or fluid or trans, or for identifying in any way that seems non-heteronormative. Like dream work, you point out.
Heteronormative means the gender binary, essentially.
Anti-gender ideology operates, as does all ideology, through unconscious modes of condensation and displacement. And you write, it's worth quoting this, condensation names how disparate psychic and social elements are arbitrarily connected with one another and reduced to a single reality. Displacement names the way that one or many topics are pushed out of the mind or externalized in favor of the one that both stands for them and conceals them, unquote. One of the many brilliant moves of the book is to show how these two processes of condensation and displacement, which are enmeshed in various societal fears and anxieties, work to forge the phantasm of gender and to aid in its circulation. So the debt to the French psychoanalyst Jean Laplanche is explicit and beautifully rendered in the book. Equally helpful is your clear exposition of an interpretive method, really, which rather than being designed to demonstrate how psychoanalysis can be applied to the cultural phantasm called gender, explores how a, quote, range of cultural and social elements are reorganized through pathways or arrangements already operating at the level of the unconscious. So according to this logic, you argue, the anti-gender movement is guided by an inflammatory syntax. That is a way of ordering the world that absorbs and reproduces anxieties and fears about permeability, precarity, displacement, and replacement, loss of patriarchal power in both the family and the state, and loss of white supremacy and national purity. This is all on page 13, by the way.
Oh,
And I love this passage
page
because it
13.
attunes
Got
us
it.
to the ways in which condensation and displacement actually work to contain a variety of fears within one big externalized fear, gender. Gender is a bit like Frederick James.
Well, see, the thing is, Sandy says, I don't care if they promote gender ideology as long as I'm free to mock it and debate and debunk it. The thing is, that attitude is what has led us to the position we're in the first place. Now, again, in my heart of hearts, I'm an anarcho-capitalist. In my heart of hearts, I don't want the government to exist, but I want my private property and guns and things like that. In my heart of hearts, I want people to be able to say whatever they want because it is a free world and we should be able to say whatever we want. Practically speaking, because the ideal world that we want is not always our practical reality. Practically speaking, this attitude, I don't care if they believe this crazy bullshit, as long as I'm allowed to debate it and debunk it and that sort of thing. That is what has led to 40% of kids in the public schools believing that they are genderqueer or gender non-binary. Because they control the schools. And so they can believe whatever they want, but when their belief, when their completely illogical, absurd belief is completely corrupting our entire society and undermining our way of life, then I very much start to care.
Jameson Shark in his analysis of the movie Jaws, where the shark stands. I'm dating myself. Some of you probably never even heard.
Everybody reads Jameson.
Yes, no, it's Jaws that I think dates.
We watched Jaws.
Where the shark stands in for a host of inchoate fears wrought or strengthened, in our case, that is our world case, by neoliberal policies and the effects of deindustrialization, but whose excesses can hardly be adequately explained by these political economy conditions alone. This enactment of ideology critique that Butler performs refuses an understanding of the term ideology as simply a doctrine or worldview. Rather, you understand ideology as form. And it matters in part because whatever the content, its form is undergirded by fantasy investments that prove sticky. Ideology, in short, is hardly epiphenomenal.
Okay, everyone, we have to take a break because everyone has to praise me. Because I just had my first meal that I've had in 3 days. And it was overnight oats. And it was a cinnamon roll overnight oats. And it was really good. And my stomach still feels a little queasy because I think I'm still effed up from everything that's happened. But I just want people to know I'm not starving. Okay? I had something kind of technically to eat. I drank it, but kind of technically it was food.
Super structural, it has identifying material and structuring effects. Moreover, in the sense that you use the term false consciousness is not an issue. You share with Zizek and others the insight that a world that exists outside of ideology can only be a figment of ideology. We're all in ideology, in other words. And with remarkable lucidity, you bring to the fore the way in which ideology, understood in terms of its form, is diffusive and saturating, albeit unevenly. All that said, signing up for a version of ideology that does not traffic in claims of false consciousness hardly means that your ideology critique shies away from political judgment. On the contrary, your approach calls out the varying spurious, injurious, harmful, fear-laden, panic-inciting claims against LGBTQIA
Oh,
plus people. From your
by the way, Judy, I got the yarn. I left it downstairs. I dumbly left it downstairs. But Judy, I want you to know that I did get the yarn and it's beautiful and I love it and I appreciate it and I will show everyone on stream tomorrow.
treatment of the Vatican in the introduction in chapter 2, evangelical movements in chapter 2, but everything's kind of everywhere because it's just a remarkable book, to right-wing populists such as Orban, Bolsonaro, Meloni, inclusion and Trump, the latter especially in chapters 3 and 4, as well as anti-trans feminists and popular culture figures such as J.K. Rowling in chapter 5. Your writing is at once sweeping and meticulous, grounding your theoretical analysis in the specificities of this current movement's global and intensified attack on gender. And although you recognize this current assault in terms of a backlash against legal, political, and social gains made in the previous years, instead of reducing this attack to concepts like backlash, you track the intensified fantasies of restoration that undergird, say, Orban's images of family life and the revenant death drive infused sense of enjoyment that powers the Trump regime's moral sadism, a part of our contemporaries' fascist passions, Butler's term. I should add that I'm grateful for these concepts of moral sadism and fascist passions, which appear in various chapters of the book and were also beautifully worked out in a talk you gave a few nights ago at the University of Chicago. So my questions arise out of this gloss on the book and my appreciation kinds of counter-imaginaries that can emerge from such a robust and theoretically rich critique of our current predicament. And my initial bundle of questions is three-pronged. First, I'd like to hear more about whether, in your view, the category of gender has specific characteristics that make it so available for phantasmatic incitements. And I'll stop there to let you to respond and also talk a little bit more about what you want to talk about.
No, that's great. It's great. Lisa, thank you so much. That was a really generous reading reflection of the book, and I'm grateful to you. Usually when one writes a book like this, people take what they need from whatever chapter they need. and that's okay, it's like it's like, oh, this is the part that I need, for whatever I'm doing, thinking, whatever, my scholarship, my activism. But you actually read the whole thing.
I didn't want to have mud on my face.
Yeah, no, I really appreciate it. Thank you.
I loved it.
Yeah, it's funny when you finish a book. It's like, who's gonna read this whole thing? Nobody reads a whole book anymore. Well, maybe people who come here do. Okay, yeah, all right. You're the people who do. Well, first of all, thank you, and then, well, let's just mark the fact that we're living in a moment, a protracted moment. We don't know how long, in which the anti-gender ideology movement has announced itself in the United States and is now being elaborated by the Trump administration's anti-gender extremism executive order, one of, I think, the very first executive orders in late January, and that order does, in fact, reflect the basic beliefs of the anti-gender ideology movement. And it claims, well, first of all, it claims two things. One, that biological truth is going to be restored to the federal government. Like, I thought, oh, they have a restoration fantasy, like all these trans queer people, we're going to take biological truth as we define it and return it to truth, right? But in fact, it's being returned to the federal government, which means that they get to decide what it is. No, they're not asking biologists to say what it is. They're not doing like deep research in developmental biology to find out like what how sex determination works. And there are, by the way, 16 paradigms, conflicting paradigms. Okay, that's not what they're doing. They're saying they're going to the Vatican. They're going to the immutability thesis that is part of the Vatican's contemporary rendition of natural law. And they say it's
all the Vatican's fault that men and women
it's male
exist,
and
isn't it,
female,
Judith?
and it's based on these
Yeah.
two gametes, the large
Yeah.
gamete and the small gamete. And they think that takes care of it. And anybody who doesn't agree with that is an extremist,
Yep.
is an ideologist. And what they
True.
mean by ideology is false consciousness, and
True.
also believing in a false doctrine and imposing it. Like an ideologist is somebody who's accepted a false doctrine and imposes it on others. So the federal government comes
True.
along and says, oh, we've got the truth. We're going to dispel this false knowledge and return people to biological truth as we define it. So there's the gamete theory. Problem with the gamete, well, there are problems with gametes. I talked about this in Northwestern, I'm sorry. But the problem with the gametes is that, there's the large and then there's the small. But the largest female, the small, comes from the large. Okay, so if we're really going to go gamete theory, we're basically saying there is one sex and it is female, and Luce Irigaray wins the day. Right. Right. There's the sex, which is one, there's only one. And that would, of course, be in line with a certain kind of creationism. Like in the beginning, there was a gamete and it. But the other thing is that when you're practicing sex assignment in a hospital or at birth, wherever it may occur, whatever legal or medical person is deciding sex assignment, they can't actually inspect a gamete at that time, right? So it's a non-observable feature, which is not primarily binary. It's not originally binary. So if they want to say that's an original truth, they're going to have a little problem. Anyway, your question is a really important one, because what this executive order has done is it's built upon a lot of fear that some people have about trans life, about trans healthcare, but also about women or people with wombs who are engaged in
People
reproductive sexual
with
activity.
wombs.
None of those folks should have choice over whether they give birth or bring a pregnancy to termination. So it's against choice. It's against trans. It links feminism and trans life and all gender non-conforming people, but also gender affirming healthcare for young people. It also stops research.
Yup.
That is gender-based, which includes gender-based violence. Doesn't stop the research. It stops federal funding for the research. Right.
I don't know, Judith. I don't know. Maybe instead of only having research for gender-based violence that impacts women with wombs, maybe we should just do research on domestic violence. Because men are the victims of domestic violence too. And quite frankly, men who are the victims of domestic violence have a lot less research done for them and a lot less resources for them than women who are the victims of domestic violence. So maybe we should just remove the gender thing out of it and just research domestic violence. I think it sounds like a pretty good idea.
And it also eliminates chosen pronouns in all federal and governmental locations and agencies. Which also means research and assistance and service for people who
hang on, we got a comment over on Rumble. We've got WTF 5000 says, notice the alternating supposition. 1 minute sex has nothing to do with biology, but sometimes a long discussion about gametes, blah, blah, blah. So this person is saying over on Rumble, I don't mean to make you feel bad on Rumble. They're saying Judith Butler is inconsistent. No, she's not. Judith Butler is incredibly consistent. What the left believes is that gender is a social construct created by capitalism. That is not contradictory of her saying there's lots of different perspectives around gender regarding science, because she believes that that gender is a fundamentally separate thing than sex, and she believes that these are socially constructed categories based on what was defined by capitalism in terms of who's reproducing children and things like that within the nuclear family. So it might sound contradictory. If it does sound contradictory to you, it's probably because you're new to watching this stuff with me. But if you have been around for a while, you will know that there is actually no contradiction in what she's saying. So if you think that there is a contradiction, I guess I would invite you to ask more questions about it, and we can make sure you understand what's being said. And that's not any shade on you, because a lot of people don't understand what's being said. It just has to do with, you either know how to speak their language or you don't. And most people think they know how to speak their language when they don't. That's not your fault. That's because they speak a very specific language. So WTF 5000, I kind of starting to feel like you're not listening to me over on Rumble, because you just said 1 minute gender expression has nothing to do with sex. It's not 1 minute gender expression has nothing to do with sex. It's not just poof and she says a new thing. Judith Butler does not believe that gender expression has to do with sex. She does not believe it is a biological category, okay? She believes it is a socially constructed category based on the categories created by capitalism. That is what she believes.
Non-binary, and also for people who are intersex. It eliminates intersex. It eliminates non-binary possibilities, and it's also in the service of eliminating trans identity as a legitimate existential reality. Right. So it's defining and denying the existential reality of trans people. Right. You do not exist. You do not exist. This is an executive order that says you do not exist. You're being returned to your assigned sex, and that assigned sex is the only one. I'm just not sure on what basis that assignment was made and who it was who made it, because those gametes are not available. Okay. I mean, I'm trying to make a little bit of a joke because, it's such a grim time.
Yeah.
And I'm not just making fun of it, although one wants to make fun of it. It's very powerful. It's affecting so many people's lives. It's unbelievable. Healthcare, education, books that are banned. I mean, I actually went to Florida and hung out at the new school the new college, sorry, new school's better. The new college where they had banned the gender books, thrown them out, thrown them into a trash bin, and dismantled the gender studies program. And, but the bookstore at that place bought 250 copies of this book and handed it out to everybody who came to. Yeah. Right? I just want you to know that there's a struggle.
I'm sorry, what? I'm sorry, what was that, Judith? I'm sorry, what? The New College of Florida bought 250 copies of Judith Butler's gender studies book after they threw out all the gender books, after they swore up and down that they weren't going to do this anymore, and then they spent state money on 250 copies of her new gender book to hand it out to the students for free. Excuse me, what was that, Judith? Does Christopher Rufo know about this? Oh, he's going to hear about this, I'll tell you that.
Ban the new college. Yeah. And I'm not just making fun of it, although one wants to make fun of it. It's very powerful. It's affecting so many people's lives. It's unbelievable. Healthcare, education, books that are banned. I mean, I actually went to Florida and hung out at the new school the new college, sorry, new school's better. New college, the new college where they had banned the gender books, thrown them out, thrown them into a trash bin, and dismantled the gender studies program. And, But the bookstore at that place bought 250 copies of this book and handed it out to everybody who came to. Yeah. Right? I just
Well
want you to know
done,
that there's
New
a struggle
College.
alive and well. in
Well
the state
done,
of
New
Florida.
College of Florida, anti-woke college.
And I met a lot of interesting queer, feminist, and anti-racist people, you know, helping out when migrants are being deported and all the rest. But to go back to your question,
Stunning and brave.
look, I think gender is very intimate for a lot of people. I mean, if they understand gender as gender identity, and we could talk about the history of the concept of gender, and for a lot of feminism in the 70s and 80s, and even into the 90s, gender was not your identity. Gender was a framework for understanding a certain operation of power, right? Gender was like, oh, the gendering of education, the gendering of public space, the gender division of labor. Like, what are we, you know, socialist feminism depended on that concept and still does. So in that case, you were kind of looking at labor and public life and medicine and institutions and figuring out what the gender dynamic is and how to understand inequality. But you weren't saying this is the gender I am. But gender identity became an important issue for many reasons. But to the degree that the popular notion of gender is now linked to gender identity, it hits people at the site of identity, right? So, I mean, I've spoken to a cis man, conservative person who
A
said to
cis
me,
man.
you know, you're going to take my gender away from me. I said, why would I do that?
True.
Because
you want to
how would I
abolish
do that? But
gender.
the fantasy
You want
of
to
it is-
abolish
is
gender.
true.
Yeah.
And Georgia Maloney has said this explicitly, that the gender ideology people will take your sex away, she says. And that's how she campaigned. And then she won. Right. And what was she saying? I mean, the intimate fear of having somebody come along and tell you you are not the gender you think you are, when this is your position in the world, your possibly your power, very possibly your sexuality, very possibly your place in the family, community, religion, your connection to God. You know, I mean, there are a lot of ways that gender can work, especially for, you know, heteronormative cis people who have very, very strong stakes in it. And they want to think and know that it's immutable. And Trump is saying to them, it's immutable, right? What's he saying to them? No one's going to take it away. It's immutable, it cannot be changed. So he's not just saying to trans people, you've made a mistake by changing their legal status. He's also saying to a vast number of cis straight people, no one's going to take your gender away. No one's going to expropriate this. This is yours, and it's immutably yours.
True.
Now, of course, if we look into the world, you know, if we look carefully and say, well, where is this practice happening of people being stripped of their sex identities? I mean, has that actually happened?
Yes.
As a result of a gender studies classroom?
Yes.
Or a set of publications by Haymarket? Or,
Yes.
You know, I mean, has
Judith.
that happened? That
Yes.
you know, somebody like said, "Oh, this book took my."
Listen, I'm not gonna go through the process of debunking Judith Butler again, because we've actually already debunked her on this issue. When we actually watched Judith Butler's talk at New College in Florida, and when Judith said, I've just never heard of anyone saying that you can't use gendered pronouns anymore, I pulled up a video on my Substack, which you can find on my Substack, of a taxpayer-funded training in Washington, D.C., where they literally told people to stop using gendered pronouns like mother, father, brother, sister, boys, and girls. Remember, we were supposed to call our brother and sister siblings. We were supposed to call our nieces and nephews nibblings. That was all. Yeah, what do you think folks is about, Judith? What do you think? No one's trying to get rid of gender. What the fuck is folks? What is non-binary? Judith identifies as non-binary. Non-binary means no binary. It means no gender binary. I can show you about 512 different publications on the far left from Queer Marxism that explicitly say that it wants to abolish the gender binary. You can find it in my Counter-Revolutionary Book Club section over on the Substack. And I promise you, Judith Butler absolutely knows about these materials. 100%. There is no universe in which Judith Butler is not familiar with things like Against the Gender Nightmare. There is no universe in which Judith Butler is not familiar with the Gender Accelerationist Manifesto or gender nihilism or the Bashback movement or any of these things. There is no universe in which this woman, I'm sorry, they, them, because Judith Butler doesn't actually identify as a gender. Judith Butler identifies as a they, them. So don't tell me you don't want to take people's gender away. You literally want to make a society in which the gender binary is abolished.
My sex away or something. Well, the only people who are actively stripping people of their rights to have the legal sex they have are the anti-gender ideology people, right?
Yeah,
That,
okay.
that includes Orban and Putin and Meloni, right, heart of Europe, and Trump and Bolsonaro, and Milei will, if he can, reverse that incredibly progressive law of gender identity in Argentina. So, and you know, the German AfD, even though they claim to have gay people in their midst, that doesn't really tell us anything. So okay,
Why doesn't that tell us anything? That crazy conservative party in Germany claims to have gay people in their midst, but that doesn't tell us anything. It doesn't tell us anything because Judith Butler is not concerned with gay or straight. Judith Butler is concerned with queer. You do not have to be gay to be queer. You do not have to be trans to be queer. Just because you are gay does not mean you are queer. Just because you are trans does not mean you are queer. Queer is a far left political ideology that seeks to abolish the gender binary and the nuclear family in order to abolish capitalism. And Judith Butler is the godmother of queer theory.
So the answer is that there is an intimate dimension to this, and people are afraid of it. And then there's another dimension to it, which is the fear of ideas, the notion that your kid will go to school and they'll learn about gay and lesbian lives, they'll learn about queer parenting, they'll learn about trans people, and you know the history, the large array of differences among them, the regional differences, what's happening, what the legal struggles have been, what the health needs might be. You know, they could learn. You know, they could read some poems, they could read some beautiful literature, some history, something. And somehow that exposure to the very idea will convert them, conscript them, indoctrinate them, as if to learn about something is to be involuntarily seduced by it and to become the very thing you read about. So the attribution of indoctrination to education on gender and sexuality, its diversity. I mean, if we're still allowed to use that word, I thought that was a kind of vanilla word myself, and now it's like, oh, we're gonna have to start saying diversity, right? Just to like, yeah, okay. So anyway, that is a major issue, and we should be aware that the success of these right-wing movements that are anti-gender and of course anti-migrant and pervasively white supremacist, and we're seeing this played out right now in all kinds of ways with rights stripping and detention and deportation. It's part of the same cloth. It's not all the same thing. That they are making.
Why is it all part of the same cloth? Because it's all oppression based on capitalism.
A deep personal appeal to people's anxieties and fears at a very intimate level.
And do you think that the anti-gender movement's repressive techniques are link? I mean, you kind of just said they do link those strategies to other kinds of strategies, like those that are deporting immigrants, legal residents of the United States, or punishing people for protesting against genocide in Palestine?
Yes, I think that the way this version of authoritarianism is working, and not just in the U.S., but in several places. This is a transnational authoritarianism that has actually come late to the U.S. So if you in the global, I don't know what it's called, something about global something in the book. It's a chapter. Maybe it's like a global scene or something. I try to explain that it moved through Latin America, it's moved through Eastern Europe, that through the World Congress of the Family and other major right-wing conservative Christian organizations, it's been moving from area to area and evolving since the 1990s. But in the U.S., at least now, the fact that you could, that the administration can negate people's legal rights that's on the books. It's like, what else will they negate? They're stripping people of fundamental rights they have to define themselves and to take advantage of a shift in legal status, which is possible and legal, to have access to health care, which is humane and obligatory, and for trans youth to have access both to education and to health care, including counseling. I mean, there are Texas parents who've been vilified and criminalized for sending their genderqueer kid who's like trying to figure out, which way am I going? How do I feel? And how do I understand myself? Right? Open, big questions that young people have. They were criminalized for sending their kid to therapy so that he had a safe space in which to explore that. And education also can't be that a safe space in which to explore that. So how do you find your way?
The fear of mutability, it really seems to undergird
Yes.
the sort of hostilities that we're experiencing from this repressive authoritarian.
Yes.
I mean, not, you pointed out a couple of days ago, not yet fascist, but the movement's fascist.
Well, I think the fascist appeal is made to strengthen the authoritarian powers and to expand the executive branch way beyond what it ever has been, and to contest the balance of powers and to contest the power of the judiciary. So, so executive or autocratic right stripping is linked to the right stripping of deported people, especially of international students who are living with fear. I don't know how many of you are living with fear, but my guess is some of you are living with fear, right? I'm sorry. You should not be living with fear. But they can you could be in the middle of a legal process. You followed every rule and they can still take you out, right? We saw you in an encampment. Somebody said you were at the encampment. All encampments are Hamas. All encampments are signs that you are an enemy combatant who's been allowed into this country and must be expelled, right? That's that. So nullification, expulsion, carceral containment, detention in Salvadoran prisons or Panama or wherever, or along the border where there have been some hideous detention centers for a really long time under Biden as well. Let's remember, he's no angel. Anyway, but they are linked. They're different forms of rights stripping, abandonment, nullification, expulsion, and forcible displacement. And I think we need to think very carefully about how these things are being linked, because our solidarities and our analysis has to link them, and we can't be sectarian. We can't be just in my corner.
I think what she's saying, so Fenderbean says, she said it's not fascist, it's not yet fascist there. Is she talking about capitalistic fascism or something else? So they're always talking about capitalism. I mean, when they say fascism, they mean capitalism, they mean anyone who's not a communist. But what I suspect she's saying is that, you're still allowed to say that you're trans right now. You're still allowed to say that you're queer right now. So I think she's kind of alluding to the fact that, like, someday they're going to outlaw all of that and we're going to have to be trans and queer in our basement and DIY all our hormones because no one's going to do it and stuff like that. She's saying that capitalism hasn't fully silenced them yet. would be my guess.
I think, you know, people are protesting against the genocide in Gaza, are being deported for having stood up for justice and opposing a genocide, which is an international crime formulated in 1948 in the Genocide Convention, right? So they're speaking in the name of a post-Holocaustal principle of justice. I'm about to lose my shit here. Okay.
Please do, Judith. Please do.
But the thing about those deportations is that those folks are also, what are they objecting to? Bombardment, killing, tactical starvation, but also constant movement, forcible displacement of Gazans and Palestinians from their homes, which has been part of the colonial settlement project from the beginning, right? So these are linked, and we need to be making those links and understanding how they're linked and make our solidarities on the basis of our knowing understanding of the deep links.
You also make a really important distinction between backlash and restoration. And I was wondering, part of what you're doing in the book is also inviting us to imagine an otherwiseness to this current dismal time. And I wonder whether you think there are different political implications of the backlash story and the restoration story.
Yes, there are. Thank you. So people who talk about regression or backlash, well, they're two different things, but they both assume like, oh, we were making progress, like everything was moving forward, and then there were folks who didn't like the forward motion, and so they beat it back, and we have backlash with a reaction to a progressive agenda. Of course, that's true at one level. The problem is that the appeal of this movement has everything to do with a promise, at least the anti-gender ideology movement, but I would say with the fascist of the new libertarianism as well. A promise of a restoration of a prior order where there were males and females, and you knew the difference, and there was nothing in between and nothing outside, where marriage was heterosexual and conjugal, and you only procreated within its terms, where white supremacy was uncontested, and where you didn't have to watch your language because everybody was getting, insulted or offended or acting as a linguistic cop or whatever it is they say. So this kind of desire to return to a former time of stability and dominance, especially for white men, I think we can just say it like that. That's a very strong pull, and if we just call it a backlash, then we're noting a sociological phenomenon, and we're assuming that there's forward and backwards movements. But the restoration fantasy wants to return, doesn't just want to pull back the progressive legislation or nullify it. It wants to return to a former time. And it's making a promise, and it's responding to a promise of an impossible return. And what worries me about the progressive agenda is we can't just keep moving forward like, oh, we'll win the next round, we'll win the next election, we'll get a new bill out which gives us abortion rights or gives us trans rights. I mean, of course we do need those legal struggles, and I've never been more grateful to radical lawyers in my life. Okay, so don't get me wrong, but the radical lawyers, as indispensable as they are not going to pave the way toward a revolutionary future.
Yeah,
right. Because that's not paved with lawsuits.
I'm sorry, what, Judith? Again, is Judith alluding to the fact that she wants to violently overthrow the United States government because the only way they get to abolish capitalism is to overthrow the government? Is that what she's saying? That's not going to be done with lawsuits. That's not going to be done with elections. That's going to be done with the violent overthrow of the government. That's what they mean when they say revolutionary. Yeah, she just did. Yeah. That's what they mean when they say revolutionary, guys. If someone is a revolutionary socialist, they believe in violently overthrowing the government because they believe the government is the capitalist U.S. government. They believe the Constitution is the capitalist U.S. Constitution. There are two factions on the socialist left. There are the reformers, who are the Democratic Socialists of America, who believe they can work within the system. They believe that they can get elected and make small reforms and this, that, and the other. And then there are the revolutionaries who don't believe they can win via elections. They don't believe they can win via lawsuits or working within the system. They believe the only way they can win is by violently overthrowing the United States government and abolishing the Constitution, because it was all built on capitalism. Again, Judith?
Gives us abortion rights, or gives us trans rights. I mean, of course, we do need those legal struggles, and I've never been more grateful to radical lawyers in my life. Okay, so don't get me wrong, but the radical lawyers, as indispensable as they are not going to pave the way toward a revolutionary future.
Yeah,
right. Because that's not paved with lawsuits. But what does is appealing to people's dreams and their fears and anxieties, and giving them another way to think about what they're fearing. Showing them what they don't need to fear, showing them what they do need to care about, or having a vision of a way of creating a compelling version of the world that actually persuades people that I'd rather live in that world of equality and freedom and justice. That's a beautiful world. We're going to all breathe more freely. We're going to treat each other well. We're going to be less frightened in such a world. And but how would we on the left appeal to these deep anxieties and fears that that are being exploited by the right?
Yeah,
we can't just ignore them, right? We actually have to appeal to them in a different way.
and that gets me to a question. I was very intrigued by your acknowledgement that the people who organized to prevent, say, trans people from getting affirmative confirming care, or who conjure up horror stories about unisex bathrooms, or who make slippery slope arguments about gay, lesbian, and queer people parenting or whatever, will probably not be convinced by the arguments you make in the book. They do.
That's true.
You do. So and you're clear that these folks are not necessarily interested in good faith deliberation or evidence-based arguments, and yet there are moments in the book where I do see an aspirational effort to persuade or to do the pedagogical work of opening up those audiences to possibilities. So I wondered if you could say a little bit more about, is it ambivalence or?
No, my best hope is that the confused center will get something from the book. Right? The one's like, I don't know, like, what is that trans education thing about? And I don't know, like, why should they get hormones? Isn't that bad for the body? And it's like, well, let's sit down and talk. And what about prisons? Like,
see, this is what the left understands that the right does not understand. I have been trying to explain this to the right for years. People come to me and they're like, how do we change the minds of the left, Karlyn? You don't. You don't. You do not change the minds of the left. There is nothing that you can do to change the minds of someone who has been indoctrinated into a cult. You cannot wake people up from a prison that they do not want to be freed from, especially when they've created that prison for themselves. And a lot of these leftist scholars have literally created that prison for themselves. They've created a prison of ideology for themselves that they don't want to free themselves of. You can't wake those people up. You can't even wake people up that have been like hardcore into this stuff their entire lives, and that's not their fault. They got indoctrinated into a cult when they were 5 years old in the public schools. Who we can reach are the moderates and the centrists and the independents and anyone who has not been indoctrinated into the far left cult to say, hey, do you guys know what's going on? Because those people over there, they're crazy, right? Like they believe crazy things and they're doing crazy things and they control the schools and that doesn't seem like a good idea to me. We can reach people who are not in the cult We cannot wake up the cult. And Judith Butler is saying exactly the same thing. She's like, I'm not trying to wake up conservatives. I'm not trying to convince them. I'm trying to convince the center.
No, like trans women in women's prisons. Like, well, did you ever think what would happen to them if they were men's prisons? And why is it that they got moved back immediately after they were moved? And who is it who's really doing the violence in prison? Anyway, it's the guards.
Oh. Why do these leftists actually most of the time only go after the middle class? They don't. That's not true. I understand you're new. I don't recognize you, so welcome. But what you just said is not true. Why are they never going against the big shots? They go against the big shots all the time. They talk about them all the time. The big shots are actually who they're primarily concerned with. So the first thing you got to do is when you come into this space, it would have been better for you to ask a differently worded question, because you're not actually asking a question, by the way, just so you are aware. You're not actually asking a question. What you're doing is stating a position, and you're putting it in the form of a question to try to own the libs. We don't do that here. Karlyn, do these people ever go after the big shots, or they just focus on the middle class? And I would say they ain't focusing on the middle class for nothing. It's not about the middle class or the upper class. It's about capitalism. And capitalism doesn't necessarily mean upper class in this case. It means anyone who owns private property. And so fundamentally, the basis of your assumptions are flawed at the moment. I hope you stick around. I hope you learn some stuff. And if you have questions, we're happy to teach you.
What is really violence about prisons? It's the institution. It's a violent institution, right? I mean, in other words, you have to lay it out. You have to, like, quietly, I don't know, maybe a little less sarcastically than and I can arrive at a non-sarcastic place. But I think one has to like take those like slightly well, not slightly, like very distorted, fearful images also of migrants, which, and remember, the Trump campaign put the migrant fear and the trans fear together in claiming through its robocalls that Kamala Harris would authorize trans surgeries on migrants. Okay, a total lie, but it really did a certain kind of political work. First of all, Kamala Harris, black, educated, coastal, no, woman, no. She is a liberal who says they, and she also.
Hang on, we got a follow-up question. Because they want to abolish capitalism. Bro, you're gonna have to listen. But then why not join the right temporarily to go after the globalist class? First of all, the idea that the right is going after the globalist class right now is laughable. What exactly is the right doing to go after the globalist class? Can you make us a list? What has the right done lately to go after the globalist class? Nothing. Nothing. If anything, right now, the Trump administration is supporting the globalist class. The Trump administration is feeding into the globalist class. They're not going after, they're not going to dismantle shit. So there is no universe in which the right is going after the globalist class. There is also no universe in which people who have been indoctrinated into a leftist cult are ever going to join the right because they want to abolish all private property ownership. Do you understand this? Yeah, you think that Jordan Peterson's ARC organization is going after the globalist class? Jordan Peterson's ARC organization is the WEF for people who didn't want to be associated with the WEF, or they got shunned from the WEF. They didn't get into it. They weren't part of their young cohort of like whatever. Jordan Peterson has literally created his own globalist organization called ARC, which is meant to compete with the other globalist organization called the WEF that Jordan Peterson and his friends couldn't get invited to. And because they were upset that they couldn't get invited to it, they just created their own globalist organization. Don't ever tell me the right is fighting globalism. That's absolute bullshit.
Will authorize these surgeries. Like, where and when? Who is talking about this? It's a total fantasy. but it allows the fear of the migrant coming in, the fear of trans, the fear of the Black woman who's a coastal elite, all of these things to come together, and then you just say no to the whole thing and Trump gets elected. I'm not saying it's that simple, but it's one example of a very tactical deployment of a phantasmatic scene to absorb people's anxieties and redirect them toward a right-wing authoritarian solution that promises a restoration of a prior order and a less frightening world for some.
And that fear of being changed or
Changed, I know.
somehow.
Well, I think it's a fear of loss, especially for those who experience their whiteness or their
Capitalism,
gender as
also capitalism.
incontestable, right? So it might seem like, I mean, at an intimate level, it's like, don't take my whiteness away, don't take my masculinity away. That would be castrating, and I would lose my dignity as a person as I understand it, and I would lose. But at another level, it's like I would lose my domination.
Yeah.
You know, I would lose my supremacy. If I were able to say simply, I kind of like my gender, I'm not about to change it, thank you. I'm gonna live out this world in the gender I was assigned because it works for me, thank you. And if it doesn't work for you, you should have the right to change that and find your way with a different legal sex and and we can all live together and go to Whole Foods or something. Right? I mean, just a simple kind of liberal Christian, Christian understanding. Like, okay, like I kind of like mine, I'm like, it works for me really well. Yeah, just being straight, like, yep, definitely straight, definitely straight. Not going to change, that's not going to change, but somebody else, bisexual, somebody else has a different life history, somebody else will never be straight. In the same way, you will never not be straight. It's like,
Okay. So here's my recommendation for you. And I will answer your question, but I'm going to give you a recommendation. I want you to go over to my Substack. That is Karlyn, KARLYN.substack.com. And I want you to click on the How to Speak Socialist link at the top. And I want you to scroll down a little bit. And on the very first thing, you're going to find the How to Speak Socialist 4-hour crash course. And this is going to answer all your questions. And I'm not trying to dismiss your questions. I'm just saying, if you are actually interested in understanding this and seeing the left talk about it, go watch this presentation. I know it's 4 hours long. I know it's a lot, but it's filled with clip after clip after clip after clip after clip of the left telling you what they think. So you can actually just hear it from them. And I kind of guide you through the clips so you can hear what they say about all of this. Why do they want to remove capitalism as in private property? Because that is the basis of what communism is. That is the whole idea of communism. You eliminate any privately owned property that can allow an individual to amass personal private wealth that is not available to the collective. That includes your ability to own a home. That includes your ability to own land. That includes your ability to own an apartment rental that you rent out as a landlord. That includes your ability to have intellectual property. That includes your ability to have a private business, whether that private business is big or small. That includes your parental rights over your kids. That is... that is considered to be a form of private property. Your parental rights are private property, and your individual liberties are also a form of private property. And so they want to eliminate that because they believe that when all resources are available to the collective, that everyone will be fundamentally better off. They actually do believe they're creating a better world. That's part of the challenge of this. These are not evil people. These are not mentally ill people. These are people with fundamentally different values than you have. They see the world in a completely different way because they have been indoctrinated into a far left cult. We have to start addressing the problem actually as it is. And if you go and watch the How to Speak Socialist presentation, you will learn about the problem as it actually is based on their own words. And that is the very best recommendation I have. If you want to learn this topic, this is the quickest way to get into the work I do. At least at the moment, I'm trying to create some easier ways, but this is the way at the moment. So I would recommend that. And thanks for asking questions. I really do appreciate it when people ask questions, especially new people. Questions are always welcome. It's tough to understand this stuff when you first start listening to it, and I get that.
Oh, okay, we live in a world in which both of those utterances are possible. I mean,
And-
is it so terrifying? But it is.
Yeah.
It is.
And these people have already experienced loss. That's the other aspect.
They are terrified of losing more.
Losing more.
They've lost their
Hey,
sense of
Tayton.
centrality and supremacy, or they see it's under contestation.
Thank you, Tayton, for the super chat. Love you. Sorry, but didn't mean to distract. Doggy had a great life. And it's good. I know. See, you're going to make me cry in the middle of the presentation, Tayton, but I do appreciate it. I appreciate the super chat. Yeah, I know. You know, the more I've thought about it over the past couple days, the more kind of like beautiful the gift that Honey gave us in terms of like dying at home in front of the heater so that we didn't have to go to the vet. And I feel like Honey kind of saved us from that experience, because I think I would have been like, you think I'm messed up now? You should have seen me if I would have had to take my dog to the vet to have her be put down, because I would have been floored. I would have been out. You guys would not be seeing me right now. I would be emotionally destroyed. And so what she did, and I do believe it was a choice for her, and I believe she knew what she was doing. I believe she wanted to leave on her own terms, and she just went to sleep in front of the heater, her favorite spot. So okay, I'm gonna stop now. I'm gonna stop.
So when we talk about a backlash, we're actually talking about people who are deeply ungrounded by progressive movements that are
Okay, bro, listen, you need to go and watch the presentation. The presentation will explain the family stuff. It will explain everything. You need to go and watch the presentation. Come back to us after you've watched the presentation.
to establish equality, and equality is loathed by some people. It never ceases to amaze me how much some people can hate equality.
I agree.
Yeah.
Do I have time for one more question? I said I was going to keep time, but then I put my phone away.
You're good.
I'm okay. Oh, thank you. So this is a kind of more, I don't know, typical question. So excuse me in advance, but you mentioned how your understanding of gender's social constructedness has changed since writing Gender Trouble.
Oh yeah.
And I wonder if you take us through those shifts in your understanding and analysis, which is so responsive to circumstances, including new kinds of knowledge production. And yeah.
Okay.
It's really chapter 6 on.
You know, I've been doing this for 35 years.
She said we had time.
Okay. Well, okay, don't make a comedy routine out of it.
Oh, I'll make a comedy routine out of it, Judith. Don't you worry.
I think in Gender Trouble, written really in the late 80s, although it appeared in the early 90s for the most part, was dealing with the sex-gender distinction and trying to change it, trying to take it apart certain ways. But the older sex-gender distinction that I was working with assumed that sex was a biological reality and that gender was the social or cultural organization of that sex. And what was great about that distinction was the Simone de Beauvoir idea that your biology is not destiny. So you could have this sex, but that doesn't say anything about how you're going to live or love or what kind of work you're going to do or what kind of person you are. So it was a feminist slogan and precept of the time that I was working with. But I was also aware, even in Gender Trouble, that sex assignment was a problem because if
Hang
there
on.
was
Hang on. When they say Western, they mean capitalism. It does not mean white men. It does not mean Europeans. It means capitalism. So yes, it's non-Western, but not in the way you think of it. And when you watch the presentation, you will understand this. And I promise you, bro, every question you're going to ask, everything you're going to say, every owning the lib comment that you might have in your back pocket, I promise you, the people in this chat have watched the 4-hour presentation that we're telling you to watch. The people in this chat know what it says. And the people in this chat are going to keep telling you everything you're looking for is in that presentation. Like everything.
It's a form of power that was deciding what sex you could possibly be, and that was binary. Then the cultural and the social are kind of operating before sex comes into the picture. Now that led some people to think Butler thinks sex is an effective discourse or sex is an effective history, but it doesn't have any material reality. And so imagine all the people who didn't like that. And that came at me a lot. And then, of course, I did work with some graduate students on sex determination in non-human species, and I certainly read Donna Haraway extensively. But I became more interested in the biological sciences under COVID, and in particular, the different ways of thinking about immunology. And there's a theory within immunology called co-construction, and it suggests that the body is not a defense against an alien element like the virus, but it is actually in a relationship with external realities all the time, and it doesn't defend itself against them primarily. It actually takes them and incorporates them and can tolerate some and can not tolerate others. But the fact is that none of us would survive if we didn't take in what is external to us, and if we weren't acting on the world that we understand as external. So the whole idea of what is internal and what is external had to kind of come apart, but so too did the idea that biology is somehow separable from environmental factors or society or culture or institutions. They're always they're interacting and they're co-constructing the organisms that we are. Now, when it comes to sex determination, it's also, I think, quite interesting because it turns out that, the Olympic Committee can figure out what your chromosomes are, they can figure out what your hormones are, but what they can't figure out necessarily is what activates your chromosomes and what has transformed your hormones in the course of your life. So the co-constructionist model, which I find very interesting, suggests that the world has to act on us for us to be produced as an organism at all. So, and we're constantly being acted on, and we're constantly
The Frankfurt School came to the United States in the 1930s, and they set up shop at Columbia University, and that is how they took over the universities. And when they took over the universities, that they gave them the teaching colleges, and then they used the teaching colleges to take over the K through 12 schools. That's how. And that all happened 100 years ago. So we're dealing with a 100-year problem. This is not recent. This did not happen under Obama. This is a 100-year problem that has not yet been solved and will only continue to get worse.
And so when we think about what activates so-called sexual development, it's always an interactive scene of some kind. And that takes us way beyond what the sex-gender distinction was doing and my early Foucauldian kind of efforts to...
Appreciate it. I'm working on a book that will help you too.
That's a remarkable account of the trend.
Well, there's even then an ecological dimension to this perspective, which I also find really important given climate catastrophe. So yes, I have gone through many pathways since then.
I'll just ask, is there a question that I haven't asked you that you want me to ask you, or that you want to answer without me asking?
Um, I don't know. I think I'd like to know what other people might want to talk about.
Let's do that. Let's open it up for
Yeah,
Okay.
Q&A.
Yeah,
Let's do
that's
that.
great.
We love
Thank you.
Q&A
Yeah,
here.
for sure. Why don't you field your own questions?
Okay. An eager
Oh God.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for this discussion. This was wonderful. My question is, I'm drawn to the fact that you use the word phantasm throughout this, and I was wondering what the origin of that word was for you in this project. I was thinking, as I was looking through it, about like
It's not my fault. Socialist
haunting and
technology.
sociological imagination, and so I'm wondering what's available.
Yeah.
That has this kind of spectral or speculative element to it that maybe isn't available, but that you found intriguing other than a different term.
Yeah,
that
thank
could
you.
use.
Well, I very much like Avery Gordon's work. And I didn't think about the haunted quality of the phantasm, although it is in line with what I'm saying about fears and anxieties getting clustered there. So I think there are two concepts that work in the book. One of them is the phantasmatic scene, which I take from Jean Laplanche, and I'm suggesting that that works through a kind of syntax that clusters different moments of fear, anxiety, or desire together in a particular image or story, and that absorbs those elements and also has an inflammatory or inciting effect on people. And then the phantasm I think of as an element in the phantasmatic scene. So not something, not exactly a ghost, although it can be ghosted, but rather a like gender ideology itself.
bro.
The term.
Bro. I've answered a lot of your questions. What I'm going to tell you is you need to watch the presentation. And we want to concentrate on what Judith Butler is saying because Judith Butler is telling us what they believe. So we want to, I'm not trying to ignore your questions. I've just answered a lot of them. Did the elite let this happen? Conservatives have no fucking idea what's going on. Do you want to know why this happens? Do you want to know why this happened? Because no one stopped them. This is not some WEF conspiracy, bro. The WEF and the Radical Revolutionary Socialists aren't even the same thing. Judith Butler is not a WEF plant. Judith Butler hates the WEF. Judith Butler is not taking George Soros funding. George Soros doesn't fund these people. If you believe that he does, you need to stop listening to whoever you're listening to. It wasn't the elite. It was Jewish intellectuals in the Frankfurt School who came over and set up shop at Columbia University and then proceeded to take over all the Ivy League colleges and then proceeded to take over the other colleges and then proceeded to take over the K through 12 schools and indoctrinated an entire generation via the colleges and the K through 12 schools. Actually, more generations now, several generations. This was not an elitist plan. It just wasn't. So what I'm going to recommend is you listen to what's going on. Go watch the presentation. You can come back anytime and ask questions after you've watched the presentation, but the presentation is going to answer your questions. The reason these people are in control is because conservatives did nothing to stop them for 100 years. The reason that conservatives did nothing to stop them is they weren't paying attention, or they were fighting the wrong enemy, or they convinced themselves that Democrats are the same as communists when Democrats are not the same as communists. They treated Democrats as though they were the main problem when Democrats were just a distraction all along. They're in power because the right allows them to be.
Is there anybody who says, yes, I practice gender ideology, or I defend gender ideology, or
You literally,
I
Judith,
work in
you do.
field of gender ideology.
Yes.
I teach this.
You teach gender
it's a
studies.
slur, right? It's an allegation, and it exists as a discursive item or as a believable item to the degree that it arrives as an allegation.
This is one of my favorite new Judith Butler talking points, because Judith Butler is saying there's no such thing as gender ideology. I don't know what all these conservatives are talking about. Why do they think that we're teaching something called gender ideology? We don't even like gender ideology. Gender ideology is a slur. It's like she's just making shit up.
An element in the phantasmatic scene. So not something, not exactly a ghost, although it can be ghosted, but rather a like gender ideology itself, the term. Like, is there anybody who says, yes, I practice gender ideology, or I defend gender ideology, or I work in the field of gender ideology. I teach this. No, it's a slur, right? It's an allegation, and it exists as a discursive item or as a believable item to the degree that it arrives as an allegation or a slur or an insult or a caricature. But things like that, and even the migrant, the undocumented migrant, illegal, they would say. Like suddenly there's a figure that is circulating. Suddenly it's a figure of fear. People get worked up about it. It contains a lot of anxieties and fears about their own life, their future, whatever's going on, their racism. It's all collected there. So it's the collected character and the inciting or inflammatory character that I'm trying to get at. And hauntology, as Avery Gordon would put it, has a role to play, because what's being relived or reimagined, or where is the absent past in that particular kind of phantasm? I think that's a really good question. It's probably not one that I explored enough, but one could. Okay, over here, please.
Thank you so much for
Oh,
coming out to
God!
today. I found what you were saying about the
Not my
confused
fault.
center to be really interesting, because there are so many people, I think, in many of our lives who are that person who are trying to push, hopefully, further to the left.
Yeah.
But for me, it's my mom and my brother, and you know, I've come at it in so many different ways. Like, how can I have these conversations with them? How can I, like, I don't know, send them an article or like a TV show, and they're just very hesitant to discuss it with me.
Yeah.
But the book, I think, is really accessible, mostly because he's.
We'll give you that. Thanks for dropping by.
It was hard. It was hard.
It's accessible because he's current events that uses things we see on the news and in the newspaper. Is there something in this book that I can bring to my mother? From the book that I can say, I read this, I thought you might be interested in it, that you think somebody who is truly just like the confused center will find truly accessible and not scary.
Okay, so first of all, I don't know your mother, so I can't say. But I understand. Yeah. You could give your mother the introduction. You could give her the section on Trump. But there are a couple of articles in The Guardian, one from a few years ago and one more recently, that she could read together. Yeah, maybe collect some things from popular culture and see whether she's open to it. And tell her you want to have that dialogue and that she shouldn't shy away. You know, I mean, I can't tell you how many people have said this to me. And one student at Stanford was actually very moving to me, said she goes to the South and her white parents are Trump supporters, and she has a hard time having any conversation with them. But she doesn't want to break with them totally. And she said, I want to hold their humanity at the same time that I'm disagreeing with them. And I just thought, wow, if only the Christian left, you know, could hear that. right? Because the problem is not Christianity as such, it's Christian nationalism. It's Vatican doctrinaire, it's evangelical white supremacy, and nationalism, and uh, homophobia, transphobia, misogyny, racism, all of it together. So, but there's, especially if people have a religious background, there are ways to come around, because if that young person is saying to her parents, or about her parents, I have to find a way to hold their humanity as I disagree with them. Why aren't those parents saying, I want to hold the humanity of my trans kid? I want to keep this relationship with my trans kid,
Wow.
even as I remain bewildered, confused, afraid. Right. So there is something in there that is really important, and whether it's an ethic, a secular ethic, or a religious ethic, there's a way of putting the relationship first, and of accepting that we don't always know each other as well as we think we do, and that being open to each other in a way that doesn't assume you have the answers to the question, who are you and what is it you're looking for in this world? Really listening when people tell you. So I don't know. That's my little. Okay. Yes, there's a red sweater.
Oh God!
That's helpful.
Sorry.
Yeah.
It's not my fault. It's not my fault. The volume keeps going up.
I'm maybe trying to do sort of a hopeful twist on what's going on, but I'm just wondering, where's all this fear coming from? And I do understand that the fear is like sort of self-producing, right? That it's like fear breeds fear. But I'm also just wondering if the fear is partially because gender ideology is working, right? Like that there's like that we are getting closer to sort of we were getting closer to something that we were hoping for, and that intense fear that we're seeing right now is a reaction to that, in the same way that the state would build a wall, or like there's this intense attempt.
Yeah.
You understand what I'm saying?
I do. I think that's partially right, but I think there's something else, which is that people, many people live with a lot of fear anyway. There's a fear of what capitalism has done to their working lives.
Bing.
There's a fear of the destruction of unions. There's a fear of climate catastrophe and forcible displacement and loss of jobs. There's a fear of unpayable debt. There's a fear of new viruses, and a fear of the global order that is no longer understood. I mean, we could name a lot of different things that people are really very frightened about, including the loss of their homes if they have them, or the loss of shelter, if they have that. How many people are not able to pay their debts, who don't have a livable wage, and how do we understand the accumulation of wealth among these oligarchs, these billionaire oligarchs, as so many people find that their wages are offering them less and less in terms of the power to maintain life or maintain their dependents if they have them. So, I mean, I think there are a lot of reasons why people are really frightened. I mean, unfortunately, those who promise them relief from their fear through authoritarian means are also trafficking in fear, which is why almost everybody in this room is afraid, and why a lot of people who voted for Trump are now afraid and feeling like, oh, wait a minute, what did I do? This is actually going to ruin my wage and my ability to keep a home or a refined one. So, I mean, I think we need to do some serious canvassing to figure out what are the basic fears and anxieties, and what would it mean for the left to name them differently. I think Bernie has done that. I think AOC does that. I think Naomi Klein does that. I think Arundhati Roy does that. I believe that there are a lot of people out there who do that really well, and in different ways. But we should be appealing at that level. That's why the argument in the book is not going to change the world, but a different kind of appeal may well do that. I mean, part of it is a fear of gender itself for some of the reasons we talked about, and the success of gender freedoms and gender justice and the opposition to gender violence and all of that, for sure. People are very freaked out by the change in life that implies, like how people are living, and they're afraid about their children, and they're afraid about, all that. But some of that is also displaced from these other broader fears. So when the Vatican says gender is what is responsible for the destruction of the world, civilization, man, woman, etc., or Orban says gender will destroy the life as we know it, or Putin says national values and the spirit of Russia will be destroyed by gender. Wow, that's like the family, church, the state, all in one, where gender is somehow being identified as this enormously destructive power. In Brazil, it was a diabolical ideology, and I represented the devil, him, herself. I'm not sure what gender I had. But seriously, so some of these phantasms, say gender is the cause of your problem, or migrants are the cause of your problem, right? And that's a great deflection from capitalism, from extractivism, from war, from genocide, from a lot of different things that are going on. Yes, right here. Please.
As you've been talking, I've been kind of trying to wrap my brain around it, and there is perhaps a fallacy of binary in this question, but I was wondering if you could speak more to how you make sense of the gender, especially in evolution, gender as a framework, as a form, as an ideology that we're interpreted into, but also something that is, and I think everyone in the room agrees, something that is true about each of us.
Maybe. You might be luckier than I am.
Folks that can identify with, that as they search and try to find their identity, and how we kind of make sense of something that is, again, folks are interpolated into it, but also folks can go on their own journey. This is something that, I guess as I'm speaking about it, is violent in the sense of folks being called into it, the male, female, the frameworks that people are put into categories, but also for a lot of people can hold a lot of joy in understanding their gender and their self-identity.
Right.
I understand that as I'm phrasing this, there's a binary, or there's a fallacy of binary.
No, there's not a fallacy. I don't think so. I think you're saying something really important. We're
You can tell that Judith Butler has been a college professor for a really long time because she's doing the college professor thing where like she doesn't agree with the question that just got asked, but she needs to make the person asking the question feel okay about that. Be like, no, you're having a really important conversation here. You're having a really important dialogue. And here's how I would add on to it. Leftists are so good at this. Leftists don't do, no, that's wrong for a reason X, Y, B, and Z. Leftists do, yes, everything you just said is great and it is a beautiful snowflake, but let me add on an additional factor to allow you to consider your position further.
We're called to gender against our will. We're given a sex assignment against our will. So it starts as a radically involuntary situation. And it's also a situation where the sex you're given or the gender that is, interpolated becomes the way in which you're recognized as a person in the world. Like, oh, that this is one of the parameters within which I exist. I'm being hailed this way. I'm being called this way. I'm being treated a certain way. And there's always then, and it can happen at a very early age. It can happen, I think, at almost any age, that there can be a real disturbance with that, like a no, or a absolutely not, or how did this happen, or what's wanted of me? This is not right, or this is maybe, yes, I am this gender, but not in the way that I'm being treated. There are a lot of different responses to that. And some of them are joyful and some of them are great, like love this gender works for me. Having having a lovely time with this assignment. Right? And that's great. Somebody's like, moving through the world in a gender they love. Like, great, we want that. We should all be moving through the world in a gender we love if it's possible. You know, those of us, might be some who are too neurotic for that, but okay. But seriously, I mean, that's lovely.
You know, on some level, I have to respect the persistence of the questions, even though I asked you very nicely to listen to what Judith Butler was saying, but you know what? I'll answer it. Will the video also explain how they succeeded to make people, students, children, and so accept their ideology? Bro, children do not have the intellectual capacity to question what they are being taught by adults that they are told to trust. If you are teaching this ideology to 5-year-olds, they don't think to question you. If you're teaching this ideology to 6-year-olds, 7-year-olds, 8-year-olds, 9-year-olds, 10-year-olds, they don't think to question you. Everything you learn before the age of 8 is pretty much cemented in your consciousness. It's really hard to unlearn it after that. And even the way our school system is set up where kids learn for the test. They don't question things. They aren't taught to think critically. Not throughout the entire education program. They can go all the way up through high school, never thinking critically. As long as they get the right answer on the test, that's all that matters. And so if their teacher is telling them this is the right answer, that's the answer they're going to remember because that's the answer they need for the test. They don't think critically about it. Get into college, it's the same thing. So there is a world in which children are put into an educational system in which they are taught the same thing over and over and over again through all their classes. They don't think to question it because why would they? They've literally never been taught anything else. Now you add on to that the fact that a lot of leftists have kids. If you think that leftists don't have kids, you've been listening to the wrong people because leftists do have kids. A lot of socialists are 2nd and 3rd generation socialists. And so not only do they get it at school, they also get it at home as well. And they get brought to socialist meetings and they play socialist games and they do all the other things. So that's how they do it.
And if we want that for people, if we think that's a good thing, then we would presumably want it for everybody. Why not? You don't want people moving through the world in a gender they're not supposed to be, or that's doing massive damage to them. You know, there is an involuntary part, like we are formed against our will, and we're formed by all kinds of, powers, and not just the familial ones, but community and religion and schools and all the institutions up to their
Thanks for coming out.
And more state jurisdictions.
Come back after you watch the video.
We're called things. We're moved around.
Or
there
before,
is an
whatever.
involuntary dimension to that. Every time I'm in a restaurant with somebody who calls me a lady, it's like
non-binary. Judith,
I mean,
non-binary.
at a certain point, I just become kind of ethnographic. Like, oh, there it goes again. Look at that. Like, what's the machine that reproduces that? You know, like, wow. You know, like, wow, all the time. Wow. But okay. But, you know, I can't grab all those interpolations as they come out and go, no. You know, not that. I couldn't possibly. It's a stream of those, right? But then how does one find one's way? One navigates that field of power. And one does it also through assuming power and finding one's own power and strategies of power and collective power. Right.
Collective
Which is
power.
Power is not just domination, but also the possibility of agency and creation and collectivity. And yeah, I don't know if that's binary, non-binary, whatever it is, but that seems to me the name of the predicament. And I think there's a gentleman in the back with your hand up.
Oh, a gentleman.
I'm calling you a gentleman.
She assuming his gender.
Yeah, you're not a gentleman.
Perfect study occurring.
God!
I just interpolated you. Yeah. But sometimes the interpolation is also like an invitation. Like, does that work for you? Like,
It happened to be one of those undesirables, both like one of these monstrous entities, an immigrant, trans person, and an activist of sorts.
Oh, he's not a gentleman.
Found to be really interesting since moving to the United States and kind of seeking protections from the powers that be was this reaction of fear. which I kind of, to this day, don't really fully understand. It's been 5 years and I've struggled. Because where I'm from, the Middle East, Egypt, Tunisia, North Africa, the reaction has often been disgust, infantilization, bewilderment, maybe confusion, confliction, when like I show up in my truth, be it I have makeup on, my hair is extra curly that day, I'm wearing a mini skirt, whatever it may be. Rarely is it fear. And yet, when I am here in the seat of power in the heart of empire, where I am more afraid than I ever was, given that the entities I'm coming up against are more powerful than folks at home, albeit potentially less violent in the public sphere as opposed to folks at home. Here I'm confronted with fear and no longer disgust and no longer infantilization. Perhaps sometimes when I read stories of like the 80s and the 70s and the 60s, that was also kind of the discourse around queer bodies. They were disgusting, they were dirty, they were sinful. Why have we gone from disgust and infantilization, which often the cure for was, we're strong in numbers, here we are, we're not babies, and disgust, the resolution to that was, well, we can dress nice, we can look nice, we're presentable, we're just like you. We haven't figured out what the discursive weapon is to fight fear. If I'm a monster and I show up in numbers, now I'm only proving to you I'm more monstrous. If I am just like you, then that is even scarier because I can hide in plain sight. So the things that we've used in the past to fight those feelings, in fact, not only not work, but exacerbate the situation against the bodies that we are trying to befriend, love, and be in companionship and community with.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. I guess my response is twofold. One is, we can work at the interpersonal level, but people who are phobic don't generally let you do that, right? So you can't even begin the conversation because the proximity is dangerous, or aversive, or something like that. But then I think there's a broader question, which is, how is the combination of racism and transphobia being produced and reproduced here and elsewhere, such that you or people here, people in communities that are trans communities of color, understand themselves as the new undesirables, especially if they are here on visas. And I think we have to understand it as part of white supremacy, which also works through transphobia and heteronormativity. We have to keep all that in mind and figure out what those sources are and go for those sources. So there's an interpersonal exchange that's possible sometimes. And we could talk about that if you want, but I also think we need to be tracking the broader movements of Christian nationalism and white supremacy as it's producing these figures and making people live as those figures, like making people feel that they are those figures in their bodies, in the world. And as such, feeling dispensable, like you deportable, degradable. So I think we have to maybe look at some of those broader structures and focus our politics against them. The Heritage Foundation, which gave us Project 2025, is being enacted almost step by step, and the attack on universities is one of them. But also now there's a Project Esther, which is a derivative of Project 2025, which basically says that everybody who stands up for Palestine belongs to a Hamas support network. And is
it's so funny to me to watch Judith Butler talking right now. Hey, thanks Annie for the super sticker. I really do appreciate it. It's so funny to me to watch her talk right now because I'm just remembering back to like when I was in college. And when you're in college, I mean, this goes to the question that Nezer asked earlier, I guess, which is how do people become indoctrinated into this ideology? I'm remembering back when I was in college And I think I think I'm smarter than the average bear. I think I know how to think critically. But back in college, I remember looking at like my professors, and they would say stuff just like Judith Butler did just there with like the Heritage Foundation is the origin of Project 2025, and now they have Project Esther and blah 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 blah. And I remember thinking, wow, they just know everything. And I'm going to be like that someday. If I go to college for long enough, I'm just going to know everything too. I swear to God, this was my thought process. And I think it's important people learn that, because again, like, and I've done a lot of college, and I like to think that I know what I'm talking about when I say it. And so I guess in some respects, you know, college did the thing, which is I know what I'm talking about when I say it. But it's also like, I understand how full of shit these people are, you know? And I was lucky when I went to college. I went to Boston University when Boston University was still run by a conservative. The conservative chancellor, well, he was actually technically a Democrat, but like by today's standard, he would be a conservative. His name was John Silber. John Silber ran Boston University up until the year I graduated. And the faculty hated him because he was conservative and he wouldn't allow any of this leftist woke bullshit. So I was so lucky in that I have literally never gone to college in which I was being indoctrinated in my classes. That's not to say that I didn't have a leftist professor here or there. I mean, they're everywhere. But like at the colleges I went to, and this is true for my undergraduate, this is true for my graduate work, it's true for my PhD, they weren't ideological colleges when I was at them. They might be now, but they weren't then. And so I don't know, man. It's just like one of those things where it's like, now I look at Judith Butler and I'm like, she is so full of shit. Like, she doesn't even know what she's talking about. I know that where she's pulling her talking points from, and I'm watching her say this with such confidence. And I know that the young people that are probably in that room listening to her are going, yeah, Judith, that's right. And they're looking at her in the same way that I was looking at my professors in college, thinking, wow, they just know everything, when in fact they know nothing and they're just making shit up.
Undesirable and must be either silenced or deported if possible, and that's, we're living in a massive incitation of hatred right now.
Oh yeah.
And also
Are we?
a hallucinatory celebration of the power to negate people's lives, right? There are people who are reveling in the power to negate people's lives. And that's a raw sadism in my view. That's gotten institutionalized. So let's keep the big picture, because we're all going to, not we're all, some of us will be living it existentially. And others have an obligation, actually. Let's hope everybody has the power to speak out against it and to call for a different world. But I think really important to allow yourself to be regenerated through community and collectivity. Like if
through
we're
solidarity,
alone, we're in big trouble. And it's a long struggle. So how you get regenerated, how you find your joy, how you find your connection and your humor is a really important thing right now, because none of us are going to get through it without it. And good lawyers. And there's and check out the Campus Sanctuary Network, because it will help. It's giving people so many pathways. It's really important.
What's the Campus Sanctuary Network?
Oh,
someone look that up, please. Campus Sanctuary Network.
There's somebody behind. Yeah. Okay. Go ahead. Hank.
Thank you for being here tonight. I wanted to ask you, what's something that gives you gender euphoria here?
Gender euphoria? You know, I've been thinking about gender dysphoria and euphoria. And I know that some people do feel gender euphoria, especially after, I know a lot of people after top surgery just felt like incredible exhilaration.
Thanks, Bob.
But living with that, does that stay? Is it a mode of life? Or is it a kind of transport that we sometimes get to have and we're lucky when we do? But I'm not good at this topic. I'm not good on this topic because I kind of think neither, for me at least. God, this could be unpopular. I don't like gender dysphoria, and I don't like gender euphoria to the degree that it's the pathological and the anti-pathological as they're bound together.
Thanks, Reagan.
And I think the everyday life of gender survival, persistence, and joy might be a little more modest and maybe more appropriate for my age. I'm not really sure.
Thank you very much. That was extraordinary.
That's it. That's it. We made it to the end of the Judith Butler presentation. You know, when Judith was talking at the end just there, I was just like, you know, so I've been talking to my mother this week because my mother loved my dog. My mother loved my dog. My mother would come over and make my dogs eggs, and then she would take them on a walk. And my dogs loved my mother because they knew when my mother was around, they were getting scrambled eggs. And they loved that because my dogs like people food, as all dogs do. And so I've been talking to my mother a lot this week because she's really sad that my dog died as well. And you know what? Listen, I swear this has a point related to the presentation. God bless my mother. I don't hate my mother. I don't have any bad feelings towards my mother, but my mother is a Democrat. And my mother is of a certain age at this point where it's just not possible to convince her that MSNBC is wrong. And my mother on the phone today was like, Karlyn, I just believe that Donald Trump is really, really evil and that Kamala Harris would have been so much better. And I believe that we are headed towards evil times. And I just like, and I tried to be like, it's really not that bad. And then she started talking about the far right and she was like, and all these far right Nazis are taking over. And I was like, oh, like, oh, okay. Well, you definitely don't need to know I'm friends with Nick Fuentes right now. And it's just like, and I was like, I tried to tell her, I was like, I really don't think it's that bad. And she was like, no, don't, I don't want to have this conversation. She just did not want to hear it. And so I was like, okay, Mom, you're an older woman. You're a Democrat. There ain't nothing I can do. I'm not going to have this fight right now. And that's just the way it goes. But I was just like, when I was listening to Judith Butler talking, I was like, it was like that level of like delusional. I was like, oh, I understand this. I understand this. I understand what's going on right now. Anyway. Guys, that is all we have for today. Thank you for stopping by to watch Judith Butler, Who's Afraid of Gender. I think that we did get some good clips from that. We got Judith Butler saying that the New College of Florida bought 250 of her books to hand out to students, which I kind of wonder if Chris Rufo knows about that. And I don't want anyone to be too mean to Rufo until we find out if he knew about that, because my suspicion is that Chris Rufo didn't know about that because it's one of those things that like it's part of a contract. And he didn't look at the contract because, you know, oftentimes when you're on the board of trustees of a place, you don't look at every contract that's signed. That's not necessarily his fault, by the way, but I'm going to make sure he knows about that because that's kind of fucked up. And then what did Judith say? Judith talked about being a revolutionary and not being able to work through lawsuits and stuff like that. That was a great clip as well. So that is all we have today, guys. We will be back tomorrow. As a reminder, head over to my Substack. That is Karlyn, KARLYN.substack.com. If you believe in the work I'm doing, if you want to support the work I'm doing, sign up for a membership, $8 a month, $80 a year. We are going to be having an epic membership drive coming up because there's big things I want to do this year. And no offense, guys, but I need money to do it. I need your money to do it. I need money to scale because I am completely funded by you. And there is only so much I can do on my own. And so I'm looking for some new members to support my work that will allow me the ability to scale what I'm doing, get this information out to more people. And I really do appreciate it, guys. Of course, there are many ways you can support my work. Supporting on my Substack is one of them. You can also head over to my website, which is decodetheleft.com. Find the support page on there if you're looking for other ways to support my work. Via a one-time gift, via joining the Red Menace Collective, which is about my books, via buying merch in the Unwoke Art merchandise store. You can find other options there as well. Those are the main ways to support the work I'm doing. And I really, of course, do appreciate that you guys allow me to do the work I do, showing you the far left, exposing you the far left, talking about things going on the far left that literally no one else is talking about. And I can only do it because of you guys. So thank you for that. I will be back tomorrow. Jennifer and I are not doing Disenraged tonight. Jennifer, God bless her, messaged me. It was like, Karlyn, do you want to take the night off? I've got a blood vessel that popped in my eye anyway. So Jennifer very gently gave me an excuse to take the night off. And I was like, thank you, Jennifer. I think I will do that because, you know, I'm sad. I'm still sad. But you know what? I am kind of feeling like maybe I want to eat a sandwich right now. So that's improvement. I didn't want to eat anything 3 hours ago. And then I had my overnight oats. And now I'm thinking that maybe I would like to eat a sandwich, which will be my first actual real food in 3 days. So thank you guys for supporting me during this this time when I am sad. And I appreciate all of you allowing me to cry on camera every now and again. And I know many of you understand. And I will be back tomorrow and we will do this all over again. Take care, guys. Have a good one. And we will see you soon. Bye.
How are you feeling? How long have you been here?
3 months, May 17th.
And what brought you here?
That's difficult to answer.
people has eventually resulted in your being here in the hospital.
That's difficult to answer.